And we are back for more Pro Chess League 2020 playoffs. Grandmaster Robert Hess alongside me is the one, the only, the Botez Live.
Wow. Thank you so much, Robert, for that very hype introduction. We are here to be covering the match between the California Unicorns and the China Pandas. These are teams that have been in the Pro Chess League for a few years now. They have history, they have fans, and today they're both trying to make it to the playoffs. So let's look a little bit at the brackets we have here.
Yeah, and the winner of this matchup gets another tough one in the Germany Bears. Earlier today, we saw the New York Marshals take out the France Roosters in a tiebreak. That was really exciting stuff. You and I both were watching that separately, and we didn't even know at the time, but it was a thriller with Hikaru Nakamura making MVL feel like the silliest man on the planet.
That was an incredible tiebreak there. Congratulations to Hikaru. I mean, MVL was just shocked to flag that final game. Hopefully, we'll have a match that is just as exciting today.
Yeah, and there was no way anybody could guess that final move because losing on time was really not in the cards. But Maxime lost on time. And a good reminder to everybody that, hey, guess the move can win you some cold hard cash. If you're the top premium member, you win $50. Top non-premium member gets a 3-month membership. We can see from earlier today, we had a very happy Dragon B70 with a very impressive 42 out of 66, winning $50. And the 3-month diamond goes to Lego Ninja Go 4. Great username there. And, well, ahead of us today, we don't know what the money game will be, but we do know what our key game of the match. It is Dariusz Svirch taking on Yu Yangyi. That is a great battle between two superstars in the Pro Chess League. I think Svirch less known than Yu Yangyi, who's part of that 2,700 plus club. And alongside Yu Yangyi on the China Pandas is Wei Yi.
Yep, and just a reminder, Swerch was a great recruit for the California Unicorns. He used to play for St. Louis. But taking a look, we also have Grandmaster Grigory Operin, who is playing for the California Unicorns. He has been performing at over 2,700 in the Pro Chess League so far. Russian junior champion in 2014, a young 22-year-old talent who's over 2,700 in Rapids, so he's definitely a force to reckon with.
Yeah, he's also a polyglot speaking, I believe, Russian, Spanish, English, and Chinese. So he'll have to tap into these Chinese brains. I don't think that's how languages work. But when you look at that China Pandas roster from top to bottom, you got Yu Yangyi, Wei Yi, Li Chao, and Zhao Jun, a really monstrous lineup. But I'm not counting out those unicorns because alongside Svirch and Oparin is Nodibek Abdusattarov, 15-year-old grandmaster from Uzbekistan, as well as Daniel Naroditsky, who really needs little introduction to the online chess community.
That's true. Although maybe we can just share what he told us before the round. Robert was asking him how he feels going into this matchup, and he said, you know, as good as anyone can who has to take on 4 machines.
He did say that, and well, we should bring up our daily question so people can get involved in the social media with hashtag ProChess. What rule changes would you like to see for the 2021 Pro Chess League season? I know that some people are going to say, oh, Robert Hess has to play on a team. That's definitely going to be a rule change that I feel like I would not advocate for.
I would definitely advocate for that. It'd be nice to see Hess on the board, putting his commentary skills to use in his play as well.
Well, you can't spell Pro Chess without Pro Hess. So I understand why people would feel that way, but commentating, it's what's happening here. We're ready and excited for the games to get underway. Should be going in just a minute now. And Alexandra, I always put you on the spot. Who's winning this match?
And then I always do that very objective thing where I say, well, the favorites are the Chinese Pandas. So going into this, I think they have a better chance. It's going to be a very serious fight for the California Unicorns. They are outrated by the Chinese Pandas, but they've fought and have a similar performance rating to them in the league so far. So we're going to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and the China Pandas, not only do they have highly rated players, Wei Yi has been an absolute monster this season. If it weren't for some of these really dominant performances like Anton Korobov, Alexander Grishuk, I think Wei Yi should be in that discussion for MVP. He scored 20 out of 28, if I'm not mistaken. He has really helped them into the playoffs. They were thought to be a sure thing. They did struggle throughout the year, but Wei Yi has been an absolute force for the Pandas.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to get the game started. We see the players already by their computer ready to go. We have chat already very high energy. GM Hikaru is in there. Chess Bay is in there. Halvard, got our mods. All of the regular viewers are here. So nice to have everyone.
And Hikaru is going opposite of Dennis Green because Dennis Green says playoffs. I'm not talking about playoffs. He only wants to talk about playoffs, and it makes sense. We have some other players going on. I don't know how we have this game going.
No, but the games are starting as well. So
so let's get these games up here. We have. Why is it telling us?
Okay, the names are not changing.
Yeah, the names are not changing. These are not the games that we're watching. See, that's we found a bug.
Yep. Maybe we can refresh.
Yeah, we're gonna have to refresh here.
See if the names change.
Because that's not supposed to happen. And there we have it. Li Chao, Oparin.
You're magical, Robert. You fixed it. Thank you.
I just sometimes make things work. Other times I make everything work. So we have gonna have 4 really good matchups every single round. And the reason why I'm saying that is some teams, have really highly rated players on board 1, and then they have some lesser rated players on board 4. It happens. But this California Unicorns team, they're very similar in rating from top to bottom. And for China, they have Wei Yi and Yang at the top, but they're board 4 still at 2,600 plus, very strong grandmaster. So I think from top to bottom, really good matchups.
Yeah, and that's one thing where we were able to see some lopsided matches. For example, the Canadian Chess Bros versus Sweden Wasabis. I don't think that's going to be the case here. Even if we have a team that is the favorite, there are going to be pretty good chances for the California Unicorns. So why don't we start with this position here? We have a Nimzo. We got Black Bishop on b4, and it looks like he is going to take on c3. But White is going to be able to take back with the bishop and not double his pawn. Do you mind explaining the plan in a position like this?
Absolutely. If you go back to move 3 here, bishop b4, as you point out, attacks this knight, pinned to the king, and sometimes you'll play a3, allowing this capture, hoping that the bishop pair offsets kind of this bad pawn structure on the queen side. In the game continuation, instead of playing this move a3, he played queen c2, which protects the knight on c3, and black played d6, sort of an odd move. You typically see castle or pawn to d5 as main options, and maybe later a c5. But d6 goes for the plan he went for in the game, where he goes for e5 instead. And it looks like you're hanging a pawn, but black, it's very, very quick play. If you look at white, you're not castled, your king is in the center. So instead he plays a3, and as you point out, here comes the bishop capturing on c3, knight d2, and thematic pawn sacrifice.
Oh man, this is a nice one. e3. So black gave away a pawn in exchange for weakening up the white king side, doubling the pawns on e3. He is likely going to get the pawn back. White, if he wants to defend it, he can play something like queen d3, but black can easily double up on it. So maybe instead white can just decide to play a move like g3 and develop the bishop, or potentially just castle queenside. On the bright side for white, white is up a lot in development here. The knight's out, the bishop's out, the queen is out, the king is about to castle. Where do you think white should put his king?
Yeah, I think queenside makes a lot of sense. The issue I do foresee for white is this bishop on f1. I liked your idea with g3, bishop g2, but if black is able to capture this e3 pawn, it's not just the e3 pawn, the e2 pawn behind it will feel vulnerable as well. So your instinct was good with queen d3. I like that move the best, because white also could have tried e4 as a way to keep the pawn, but black likely is going to go move like queen e7 anyway, pile up the pressure. So after rook e8, the move queen d3 protects e3, and if you do go queen e7 and then take on e3, a queen trade should be nice for white, who has the 2 bishops in a position that also has more space for white thanks to these pawns in c4 and d4.
It makes sense that white would try to prompt a queen trade if black is able to recapture the pawn on e3. What about an idea like knight g4 to take the pawn back with the knight and keep the queens on the board?
Yeah, knight g4 is one of those moves you're like, please, like, let me get at your e3 pawn. Actually, if white were already castle queenside, there'd be this added threat of knight f2. But immediately you do get e4 in because the f2 square is covered by the white king. So knight g4, I think, is one of those really sneaky moves that if white castles, then knight g4 is super powerful. And
wow, b5. Oh, I'm loving Oparin's play so far. He is going for the second pawn sacrifice this game. He's showing that he is not afraid to take on these 2,700 chess machines. And Li Chao doesn't even bother to take on b5. What do you think the considerations were behind that?
Yeah, c takes b5. I'm guessing just bishop to b7, covering the length of diagonal. d5 is under black's control. e4 is under black's control. And if you castle queenside, in comes your idea of knight g4. And as pointed out, now f2 is a second target, which you actually cannot protect at all. So I'm going to fork you. Otherwise, knight takes e3 or rook takes e3 would also be good for black. So instead, d5 was played, knight b d7. The bishop on c3 is a happier piece, but so is this knight that came from b8. It might just come into c5.
Right. I mean, white's pawn structure is a lot more weakened than black's. There's a ton of holes here. So this is what black was able to get in exchange for sacrificing a pawn. Putting pressure on c4, he's putting pressure on e3, and black's development is also coming very quickly here. He's not actually in trouble because his pieces are behind, so white doesn't have any counterplay on the king side.
Yeah, and what white does want to do is keep this idea alive with an attack on f6 with bishop g2, castle kingside. That now makes sense, but there's still pressure for black. I do prefer black's position from a practical point of view, so we'll keep an eye on this one because I do think Li Chao has a lot to figure out in this one. I know he went g3, but in the next few moves, I don't think his life will be easy.
All right, so let's check out the other 3 games.
Okay, well, we're going to move on from this one for now. We'll be back.
We'll be back.
Yeah, we will. And queen d4. But we're going to go to this game because I saw Abu Sitar with the white pieces. Opposite colored bishops was the first thing I noticed. King in the center was the second thing I noticed. And black being up a pawn is the third thing I noticed.
Well, it seems like you pointed out the 3 most important things about this position. So black sacrificed a pawn, and the open d file is looking really tempting for white. I just want to put one of those rooks on d1 as fast as possible. Knight f4 is an interesting... Okay, the knight is looking towards e2, so queen takes c3,
yep.
And knight e2 is the threat here. So we could show it on the board first.
Yep, check to the king, has to move, and then thank you for your queen, I'm up a piece.
Seems like black is tempting white to try to trade off the bishop from h6 for the knight here. And once that bishop leaves the h6 square, then the black king can get a little more safety. He'll be able to castle since the bishop right now is holding the king from being able to do that.
Yeah, it's a very difficult choice in a sense because rook e1 also covers the e2 square. King h1 gets out of any checks. Moving your queen, well, still falls victim to queen takes c3, but if you go queen f3, you are spying on this pawn on c6. But then you have to calculate all sorts of potential ideas for black, saying giving up this pawn or spending time to protect it. But queen f3 does look like a useful move in general, as the c6 pawn is one that black, I don't think, wants to give up.
For a second, Grandmaster Wei Yi looked like just a dark outline. It looked very villainous with the white, with the sun coming from the backdrop. And in this position, it does feel like he is the villain because he's the one just going out there, taking free stuff and telling his opponent that it'll be worth it.
Oh, wow, I didn't even realize it was just super dark. I thought he had like his head bent over, so I thought it was just like the top of his head, and that's why it looks so dark. Like we just see his dark hair. But no, you're right. It is. And look at Nordiebeck. It's like, what time is it for him?
Night and day in these 2 cameras here.
But for him, it must be like, I don't know, 6 in the morning or something.
Where is he playing from? He's playing from Uzbekistan.
Well, I don't know if he's playing from there. I know he's from Uzbekistan.
Right.
I don't even know what time it is there. But interestingly enough, what he does look like, he looks like the Invisible Man.
Well, let's hope he's not making invisible plans here. We'll see if they're actually going to work out. So rook e1 is protecting the e2 square. There's going to be no more tactic with queen takes c3 and knight e2. And on top of just protecting the e2 square, it's a good move to make regardless because you want to bring your rook on the e file pointing towards the king on e8. And you want to allow your other rook, your a1 rook, to be able to come to d1. So this is a move you may have wanted to do regardless.
Yeah, I'm with you. And if I can get rook a to d1, and then I'm ready to take your knight away from the f4 square, because if you can imagine, say, this pawn having the take, then my rook on e1, as you're pointing out, is super happy along the file. And I think black's position is really, really tough here.
I just have one question for you here. What about a move like g5 that could potentially try to trap the white bishop on h6 and maybe go for it with a move like rook g8 or rook g6 or even bring the king up to f7? Just try to take the bishop out of play.
Yeah, g5 is a very interesting looking move because, as you pointed out, the bishop is trapped in there. You also are protecting the knight because the bishop can no longer capture it. I do worry that black is just down way too many tempi. Your idea from earlier, rook a to d1 looks very natural. The queen has to move somewhere, either c5 or b6, only two moves. Put it on, say, b6. And I'm already thinking about sacrifice. I'm really considering a move like bishop takes g5. Then I see rook to g8 is annoying. So you have to time these kind of sacrifices correctly. But something about this feels very off for black. But
I
maybe
mean,
you're not
I
just
think the
lost
reason
yet.
I'm suggesting it is because the position feels so off for black that it almost seems that he has to do moves or plans that seem unusual.
Yeah, he tried king f7, which is sort of castling by hand once you get your rook out. But rook a d1 now at least wins the pawn back. You move your queen to, say, c5 or b6. I don't really know where to go. I can just regain the pawn. I have 6 on 6. My pawn structure is healthier than this pawn structure on the queen side. My rook is still aiming at your king. I like white's position.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, there's another two games we haven't looked at yet. So far, the California Unicorn games, both of the unicorns are playing very aggressively here. Let's see if the third is.
Yeah, no, very fair point. And knight h5 plays an in-between move, an intermezzo, hitting the queen on g3. So we'll leave them to figure out. This one's getting a bit sharp. But let's go to these games, because the game between Zhao Jun and Dariusz Svirch, not super aggressive. We're from a Sicilian, and this square on d5 is usually the square that you fight for. What do you think about this position at first glance?
At first glance, I look at the asymmetry between the pawn structure and the minor pieces. So since white has two knights versus a knight and a bishop, I really wish that I could just teleport the knight from c2 onto d5. If the knight could somehow get to that outposted square, yes, it would still be an issue though, because black can trade off, and then with the pawn on d5, white has a little bit of a space advantage, but nothing that is going to alter the game drastically. So d5 is pushed right away. I guess it still makes sense for black because the d5 square is the most critical one. So if he can trade it off and open up his bishop a little bit, then maybe he'll be able to get some type of kingside attack in.
Yeah, that would be awesome for black. And the one thing I'm kind of concerned about is the stare down the diagonal. Because if I take on d5, let's say take with the knight on d5, I have this move knight to e3. Your knight cannot move as it's pinned to the unprotected queen. And that actually will just win this knight on d5. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers. You have wrong rook, 2, 3 defenders. You can't get it a fourth time. So he does take on d5. That forces bishop takes d5 for the reason I was just outlining. And now you're giving up the bishop pair. So if I take knight d5, I think you have to take with the rook, because knight d5, I again have knight e3. This pin is really annoying.
Right, and the knight looks like it's hanging on c2 earlier if you go back, but it isn't, because we would have a knight takes f6, please check.
Then I take your rook and then your queen, and black is not happy about that, but it's a very good point to show that the knight c2 can't be captured. So if they're knight d5, you have to take with the rook, and now knight e3 still looks like this pin, but rook takes d1 is a check to the white king, and black gets out of it.
Right. Yep, very nice tactical find there.
So if you are Zhao Jun, first of all, you got to get better internet connection, because I see him offline, according to
oh, that's tough. That's tough. At least we still see his video, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, and okay, he's back now. And he plays queen g3. I was about to say, this knight can come to e3, where it hits the d5 square, protects g2, might even threaten to go to f5. And this pawn on e5 is one that can be a little vulnerable. So if you are white here, these sort of trades are going to favor black, and I think it's why Svirch quickly put his knight on e4.
Right, and it seems that now he is forcing off the trade. If you're playing as white here, are you going to try and trade off the rooks, or is it better to try to keep them on the board?
I think the more trades that happen, the better black's chances will be. And it really depends on exactly how many trades are made. In an endgame without all the heavy pieces, no rooks, no queens, then I like white, because this knight can go from color complex to color complex, from the light squares to the dark squares. Whereas this bishop on e4, it looks really good with the queen on the diagonal. But imagine I play a3. What targets do you have with that bishop? You don't. Right? There's nothing to attack. I'd like the 4-on-3 for black from the E to the H file, but in a pure endgame, you're not going to be able to push your pawns to dark squares as the knight blockades. So I think it's a great question. You should always ask yourself, what trades do you want? I think white doesn't mind trading one pair of rooks, but doesn't want to trade both.
Yeah, that makes sense. So given that line of thinking, should a move like rook a c1 be played sooner rather than later?
Rook AC1 is definitely a good-looking move because it kind of asks black, like, are you going to flinch? Like, which file do you want to give me control of? And I like the move Queen G4 as well. You're just inching forward here, and Rook AC1 I think will follow, or take on D8 and then play Rook AC1. As this pawn A6 is sneakily the weakest pawn on the board. You should also think about that when you're playing games like this. Like right now, Queen E6 check is met by Bishop F7, so you probably don't want to throw that check in just yet. But your move Rook C1 to me is probably coming in this move order, Rook C1, and you're taking control of the C file. If Rook leaves D8, you give me the C8 square. If your Rook doesn't leave D8, I might even consider a queen trade at some moment with my activity giving White the edge.
Well, that was a great explanation. Maybe we should also check on Daniel Naroditsky's game. It's the last game we haven't seen in this matchup, just to get an overview of how all the games are going.
I never look at Daniel Naroditsky.
Never at all. We're both pretty frequent viewers in his stream. So,
well,
okay.
I liked your reaction. Like, oh, okay. So, well, actually, there's a good point of explanation. So, why was that your reaction?
Well, the position is very closed off, so it's likely to be pretty drawish. It's slightly easier to play it with a knight in this position because you can try and hop over the pawns, but there's no weakness that the knight could attack. Say the pawn on F3 is attacked by the knight, the king can just shift back to E2. The king is really close to the two light squared pawns, the ones on F3 and the one on C2, which are the only pawns the knight can attack that the bishop can't defend.
Yep. And this bishop is pretty much useless. I mean, it's a good defensive piece, but it can't attack because this pawn is on the dark square. You'd have to jump your bishop somewhere. And even then, the knight can simply come to E6. So I'm totally with you. Only black can have some winning chances. Oh, it was I was like, how does that just happen? But it's because the move we came for was G4.
Oh, wow.
But we didn't know that.
We didn't know it was en passant. No, that's true. We thought the move had been done earlier. Okay, so.
Yeah, so this is a situation where black, I think, has an even larger advantage because now that that pawn is out of the way, you can imagine this king coming into a square like F5 and a knight to H4. But I ultimately think that black, the advantage is slight. And we should mention that Oparin and we can stay on the camera of these players, but Li Chao and Oparin drew their game.
Which is kind of surprising considering that Oparin went for a really aggressive opening where he tried to stack two pawns. Why would they agree? So, I mean, this is a game where both players can continue going here. I find it strange that they agreed to draw.
I guess there was some concern about this A5 pawn being a target, and both sides were unclear with who's actually better. So they just agreed on draw. I'm with you. I don't like the draw offer. I wouldn't mind a draw for in the game between Naroditsky and Yu Yang, but in that other game, I'm so with you, Alexandra. Why the draw offer?
Fair enough. All right, so maybe we should go back to the game between let's see which games look the most interesting.
Both of them, honestly. The game between Wei Yi and Abdusattorov looks interesting, and so does the game between Darrow here and Jarjun because he got that rook to C8. So we have our options. Let's just flash both. C5 was just played by Wei Yi, hitting the rook, taking advantage of a pinned pawn. It's going to be a temporary win of this pawn because I can bring my knight into the center and just double my rooks in the B file. And the queenside majority, at least to my eye, looks good for white.
Yeah, the queenside majority does look good for white. And after rook takes B4, white is going to be the one with the passed C pawn. But in this position, how much weight do you put to the knight versus bishop here?
Yeah, it's actually just not going to last very long because black can already start with like bishop E6 when the knight cannot capture on B4. Because if you do that, then you lose the C pawn. So that you don't want to have happen. And if you play rook to B1, maybe there's like a way for black to keep the material for the time being. So my first inclination was that, okay, it looks good for white, and maybe it still is good for white. This move knight B6 is very clever. Protecting this pawn C4, stopping the rook from C8, and here comes rook B1 to regather that pawn.
Played bishop F5, the idea being to not allow the white rook to go to B1.
Yep.
And again, like Robert mentioned, the knight can't go to D5 because bishop E6. So Wei Yi is actually hanging on to the pawn here. But the B4 pawn seems like it's still going to be very hard to hold if it's not with some type of tactic like this.
Yeah, he's probably going to try B3, bishop C2, which is sort of awkward, but like just to put this on the board, the rook gets entombed here, and I understand that this pawn looks scary. If it could get to C7, it would be, but the black king is too quick. So my initial take, I dare I say, was probably wrong, and black is the one who's just now much better, up one pawn to start with, and this pawn is hard to get if you're white.
That's a great point. We're also getting into bullet territory here. So both players are getting close to 1 minute on the clock. We know that it starts getting a little bit more crazy at that point.
So this is looking good for Wei Yi and the Pandas. Let's scoot on over to the other game because I am fearing for Dariusz Svirch as well. So the California Unicorns in big trouble on this board, I think. The queen and the knight aiming for a checkmating square. The a6 pawn is capturable. Knight d6 is a fork. Here it is.
Wow, Zhao Jun has managed to turn it around. He seemed like he was the one in the worst position, and now he's just pressing Dariusz, who has almost 10 seconds on his clock, to 2 minutes, and he's about to gain an extra pawn on b5. And not just, sure, he has double pawns, but having two pass pawns here seems like he'll be able to convert to a win.
Yeah, and it's the thing. This bishop looks really good, but it's exactly what we were discussing earlier. The knight can go to a dark square. You can't touch that knight. It's very frustrating when you're dealing with a position like this because let's imagine this knight was on c5. If that knight were there, then it's on a protected square, an outpost. The bishop on d5, it's staring down at g2. Can't even go queen a8. I'll simply swap queens and the b5 pawn falls. The knight takes b5, I don't think will be played because queen takes b4, but even there's checks everywhere. So you went queen b6 first, and now what?
Yeah, my question for you is what is the best thing black can try to do for drawing chances here?
Yeah, he's trying to hit the g2 pawn. He is attacking that pawn right now, but f3, close out, I think e4. You have to play a move like e4. Doesn't.
So he had to play a move like e4 here because his last chance was to try to open up the position, because if somehow he could have gotten the pawn on g2 with his bishop, maybe moved back and gotten some type of perpetual hopes.
Yeah, and he throws queen e8 check to win the bishop. He moves the king to h7, and right now white's up a clear pawn, and it's a very annoying outside passer. So, oh, nice try for a draw with queen f4 check and back. So queen e6, queen f4 check. The whole point is that I'm going to give you a bunch of checks. You can try to run away as much as you want, but you're forced back to f2, and my queen comes back, and I stay on this diagonal. So he did take it.
Wait. I guess then Dariusz is going to save the game.
Wow, that's a huge, huge, huge save.
Yeah. No way Zhao Jun should have allowed this. But no. It's also surprising if he missed a relatively simple tactic like that. And he wasn't in such serious time pressure.
No, and I'm not even claiming that he was winning, but he clearly had the advantage. So to allow his opponent who was in time trouble, you were pointing out a while ago, like Dariusz had less than 10 seconds left, he just allowed him to escape with an easy half point. So if we go back just around here, you can even play queen e2 to be very solid, to keep your king a little bit safer. But he goes queen e8, and then after queen c1, I guess it's too late. The square is under black's control, and then we get to the finale of the game. It's a draw by repetition. Queen stays on the diagonal. There's just one game left, 3 draws in the books. Dariusz Svirch can breathe a sigh of relief, but that was a close one.
Yep. Well, let's hop into that last game then before it ends. Got white down a pawn here, and it's a pretty important pawn because it's the a pawn, and black's king is also really active. If he takes on f3, rook takes f6, and then white has pretty decent drawing chances. So
they're repeating. I would stop repeating if I were black. I would just go king back to g6.
Yeah.
And he's going to do that.
He probably just needed the extra increment with his 7 seconds to calculate that.
Yep. And I honestly like the idea of putting the rook back on a2 and just marching the pawn down to a3, because that will keep white's rook tied down. He should have done that with the king on f1. It's very good, just to show this here, to have the king cut off. So playing a5, a4, I think was a better starting point. But instead, he allowed the king out. And now after rook a2 check, white will certainly bring the king up rather than back to the first rank.
Right. And let's say that black is able to push his pawn all the way to a2 with his rook on a1. Then he'll be able to go for some type of tactic, but not if the king is on g2. That's the best square for the white king. So I'm curious if black will be able to push the king out of there. That's probably what's going to happen.
He's going to try his best for that. As soon as you go a2, then the king has to come back to g2.
And then we got king h4.
Trying to kind of shoulder me out here. And this pawn is a winning pawn, whereas I'll explain what I mean in a second. This is even nicer.
There we go. Rook f1, grab the f pawn and the g pawn. Oh, that was a really nice save because if black didn't have this 2 versus 2 on the king side, it would have been a draw. He
Right.
wouldn't have had any way to convert it, but because he was able to use the fact that white's rook was tied to the a2 pawn, activate his king and grab this extra material on the king side, now he'll save it and
Yeah.
rook g4 trade off and grab the pawns. Very nice.
Yeah, this is a tough moment here for the young Nordirbeck because at this moment, the king on g2 covers the f1 square, and he can't move his rook along the fourth rank because then black moves his own rook and queens. And if you move your rook, say, on the same line, the rook a6, there's g4. And after king takes, this black king will eventually sneak over and take this pawn, and an f pawn is winning along with a pawn on a2. And just to show that really quickly before we go on our quick break, first break, is that just to get into that position. What black does is very simple. You just push this pawn, and it doesn't matter where the black king is. You give a check. If your king comes to h2, I go get a queen. If your king comes to f2, here comes rook h1, threatening to promote. And if you take my pawn on a2, the only way to stop the promotion, rook h2 check, scoop up your rook. Thank you for the victory. So impressive game by Wei Yi. Good endgame technique by him in the end. And unfortunate for California Unicorns.
That's true. Well, we'll see if they're able to recover when we are back.
chess capital of Europe. Meet and greet and simul with Magnus Carlsen. It's the Pro Chess League Finals at ChessParty 2020. Caruana, So, Botez, Hammer, Rudolph, Chess Bras, an open Fisher Random chess tournament. Will you be part of the world's biggest chess party?
As Rebecca Black sang in Friday, partying, partying, yeah, partying, partying, yeah. Looking forward to the weekend. Pro Chess League Finals brought to you by ChessParty on the weekend of May 22nd to May 23rd.
Wow, this is the highest energy I've seen Robert this entire stream. If you guys want to see high energy Robert, as well as Wesley, Caruana, Magnus Carlsen, Anna Rudolph, and the Chess Bros, come to the Chess Party May 22nd to 24th in Norway. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like we were very serious in that first round of action.
Yeah.
And this is serious business. This is the Pro Chess League playoffs. But off cam, when y'all can't hear, I've just been cracking jokes with Alexandra. So it's been a good time. Hope you're enjoying the chess. I have been.
I have been enjoying the chess too. And chat, I'm actually saving you here because Robert has been making puns nonstop. Yeah. But I'm hearing it, so you don't have to.
Yeah, you are really taking one for the entire audience.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that, and so they do as well. But right now, we have a 2.5, 1.5 lead for China over California. I don't think we can say we're surprised by the results from the first round.
No, because we thought that China was a favorite, but that it's still pretty close looking at the individual pairings.
Yeah, and actually, I think California was really in danger of being down 2 points because Darius Fierce was in trouble. He managed to get out with a perpetual check that was very well spotted by him in time trouble. But it didn't feel like California was playing for more on any board.
I mean, they had some interesting openings. Yeah. I think maybe we came to the Danya Naroditsky game a little bit too late and we weren't able to see it. But I would say that they are actually playing aggressively, and you could tell that they're trying to push for some interesting games here.
Yeah, and I do feel strongly about this California lineup. In any round, they can win like 3-1 in that individual round. So they can catch up. I'm not worried about them in that regard. But, I mean, this is just such a strong China Pandas team. They have several super grandmasters. Their bottom board, Zhao Jun, is just as highly rated as everybody else in California. So no real weaknesses in their lineup.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, like you like to put me on the spot. What do you predict the final result?
Okay. 9-7 China.
9-7 China.
Yeah.
Okay. You were really close last time you made a prediction. I think you were within half a point from the actual score. Chat, everybody watching, if you guys want to get involved, let us know what you think.
And the games for round 2 are about to begin. I'm looking forward to this matchup. I do think that once California now that they have their feet wet, they're ready for the next round. When they get one win, I think that will just give them the confidence they need, because I messaged with Daniel Naroditsky before the match, and he was just talking about how strong the players from China are. And, well, the players from California are also super duper strong.
Yeah, they're just the top players in the world here. The slight differences between grandmasters and super grandmasters. But, of course, their rapid experience also is going to come into play here. So let's get started with this first game. We have a Caro-Kann from Li Chao, and Darius decides to go for the exchange variation, which is considered a little bit more drawish. Why do you think he went for this line?
I think he was surprised on move 1, because Darius spent 10 seconds after Li Chao played the Caro-Kann. And the reason why is in previous games, we've seen Li Chao play the Petrov, but a lot of the Chinese players play the Petrov. It starts like this. Instead, in this game, we saw the Caro-Kann. And as we get to the live board, he plays a very solid variation for white, where you play this h3 move before black played e6, because otherwise the bishop would have been happy on g4. Instead, we have this Caro-Kann French-like bishop that's behind its pawn structure, and the way to get it out is to eventually try moving e5. But when you do that and white takes, you're left with this isolated pawn on d5.
Got it. So Darius didn't expect this was going to be the play from Li Chao, and when you're playing somebody so strong, you might as well go for a line that's a little bit more solid. I think this position is not going to be the most interesting opening and an exchange caravan. So maybe we should check on how the other boards are doing as well.
Yeah, one last thing I'll say before we move on is that this move b6 rather than castling, when I see a bishop on d3, a bishop on c1 aiming at the king, I do believe that Li Chao is concerned about eventual bishop c2, queen d3 maneuver going for a checkmate on the king side. So he started with b6, a6 to stop the knight from getting to b5, might castle queenside if the situation arises where he's able to. But I'm with you. Let's keep moving on. Other games still very early, but let us take a look at the game between Daniel Naroditsky and he's taking on Wei Yi in a standard Spanish opening, except for the fact that there's a bishop on f6, which you don't see too often. But I imagine at some point g6, bishop b7, f5 in the style of a King's Indian will occur.
Well, looking at this from White's point of view, it's very close so far. White does have a spatial advantage, but what about that bishop on c2? It's not looking too happy yet. What kind of pawn breaks can we expect to see White going for here?
Yeah, the bishop on c2, the bishop on c8, the bishop on f6, the bishop on c1, all not great pieces. And the reason why is because no pawns have been traded. Mm-hmm. Pawns are great at taking care of and making sure there aren't open diagonals. But you asked a good question. This knight will come to f1. Eventually will come probably to h2, maybe to g4 type of maneuvers. You can experiment with pawn g4, bring the knight to g3 as well. So white tends to have some flexibility on the king side, and black tries to play on the queen side. But that's why white has this set up with b3 and c3, where if you play b4, I play c4. If you play c4, I can play b4. So white wants to keep the queen side as close as possible before shifting his attention to the king side.
That makes sense. And if he is going to shift his attention to the king side, should white try to have a plan that includes f2, f4, and trying to open up the center?
Yeah, that often is a plan for white. The question, though, is where does this knight on f3 go? Because it can go to h2, but that knight on d2 might also want to reroute to a square like h2 to jump forward into the position. And f4 does have some drawbacks where the bishop on f6 breathes new life. It's happy to get rid of its own pawn e5. In some lines, you'd even be happy to just throw the pawn off the board for nothing. Like if I could just throw the pawn off, I know I can't do it. The screen won't allow me, but I'd be happy to get this bishop on an open diagonal. So f4 has that double-edged nature to it that I think will help black in a way that other positions do not.
Makes a lot of sense. And looking in at the camera here, Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky doesn't seem too happy with his position. He actually looks actively angry. And he's definitely one of those players who you see being a little more emotional, less of a poker face. We've seen him smash his mouse during the streams.
You know why he smashes his mouse?
Just when he gets angry because he loses the game.
He lost
right?
to me.
Oh, he did that with you also.
Yeah, there's a very, he like broke his mouse because I think he tried to flag me and it didn't work and I ended up checkmating him, but I had no time left.
Oh man.
And
the shame of losing to Robert Hess. Who can blame him for breaking his hardware?
It really hurts people. So it's why I don't play anymore, because it hurts people too much. And I'm a very, I have a lot of empathy. I care about people. So I'm trying to keep the people happy.
Robert the Machine has feelings too. He's really an advanced AI. But Daniel looks extremely upset. Maybe the move a4 is a lot trickier than we're giving it credit for. If it was white's turn to move here,
Yeah, so go ahead. I was going to make a random move.
Yeah. So how would white continue? Say a takes b5, a takes b5, then we have b4, which is winning a piece here.
Well, the knight does protect the rook on a8. But you're not wrong. It's the b4 is a very good-looking move in many variations anyway, because was this knight going back to b7? That's a really terrible square to work with. It can go to c4 as well, but that has issues that you have to keep an eye on as well. So I'm with you that he started with b4 instead of taking first.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps he wants to push this pawn to a5. And Naroditsky looks really upset. And I can't tell how Wei Yi is feeling because I can't see him.
No, Wei Yi looks like a character from a horror movie, and he's just watching Daniel Naroditsky, and Daniel Naroditsky is realizing the end is coming. He's just upset. I think he hit his face, so we can't comment on it anymore.
But it's so early in the game, and the position doesn't look bad at all to me. Let's say knight g6.
Looks tricky.
Yeah, let's say this happens, and you even have to go to c8. you don't have any. Your position is very passive. Your knight on b7 is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That has nowhere to go. The pawn on b4 covers the c5 square. I will not take you on c5. So if we trade here, I'm happy for white to keep this knight boxed in. But you need more than just a bad knight in your opponent's position to try to win the game.
Right.
So he took on b4 first, went knight to c4. He didn't want to put his knight in a passive square. And he took on d2, because if you take on b6, I get to take on f3 first and then take back on b6. So where you will take this knight on d2, he's trying to figure out which piece. But like I said, I think Naroditsky's position is not bad, and I actually might even start preferring black soon.
Wow. So you're preferring it because you're going to get that c4 square for your knight, and I guess now that part of the queen side has opened up, the c file, we actually get some plans for black.
Yeah, when I see a pawn structure as well with e4, d5, I want to play f5. So I see that at some moment now my bishop can become to g5. Instead of going passive with g7, I get more active with g5 and try to play for f5. It has this King's Indian vibe to it, and Naroditsky is quite a strong King's Indian player.
Right. So instead of going for your suggestion of bishop g5, actually, never mind. The line I was going to suggest doesn't work. So let's come back to this game and maybe check out how Chess Panda is doing.
Sure. We'll move on from this one. I do love this image of Wei Yi just sitting in the darkness. Like
dun 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 dun.
And it's so light outside. Like you could see I don't know what's happening there. It's just like an intentional filter, but we will move on from this game. We'll come back to it later. Let us go to the game between Yu Yangyi and Abdusattorov. What just happened? So they saw a knight take a bishop on d3. Black has the two bishops, but has this isolated pawn. And is bishop takes f6 a possibility here? Right? It removes the guard of this pawn on d5. Essential question.
Right. And even though the pawn on b2 looks like it's hanging, black has to be careful, because after something like queen takes b2, you have rook b1. And also after a move like bishop takes f6 and knight takes d5, then the knight is also going to be pointing towards the f6 square if the queen were to stay on b6.
Yeah. And, you know, you take with this, I just take here.
Yeah, this just looks terrible. Now you have to take with your queen.
But it's kind of weird to me that something like this has happened, because if bishop f6, you would essentially, let's pause for a second. If it's black's move, let's say make a bad move at a3, rook takes e3 as the threat. Right. Queen e3, bishop d4, and thank you for your queen.
You're not welcome here, so let's go back and find.
I thought you'd appreciate the loss of the queen.
I'd appreciate keeping the queens at this point.
Okay, well, I was trying to go full gambit here, and now queen d6 will be played, because you need to also protect this bishop on c5, and as I say, e4 simply defends the knight. The bishop does attack this knight, which is pinned to the king, but you can't team up on the knight on d4, because the queen has nowhere to go to attack it. So a move like bishop c6 or bishop e6 attacks the knight on d5, but then the issue, I believe, is after king h1, bishop takes on d5, intermezzo with knight f5. As I don't want to give the pawn back, I now attack this a second time on d5. I'll regain my piece, and I have a knight against a bishop and an extra pawn for the time being.
Yeah, this looks extremely strong for white here. Oh man, this is Abdusattorov's second game where he's in a worse position. He went 0 for 1 in the first one, and he's struggling here against Yu Yangyi.
Yeah, I'm trying to find tactics for him too. Like queen a6 is a sneaky move that if you take me on a6, I'll take you on d4 with check first, and then take your queen and go up a piece for the time being. But after queen a6, you don't have to take my queen there. You can make a move like rook to d1. And I mean,
and the bishop takes d4 check here?
Yeah, you go like try to get here, and then I have knight c7, and the knight is just so strong from the d5 square. It's a big problem. So I'm just sitting, thinking maybe the early morning start is not good for him.
Yeah, apparently it's around 8 a.m. his time, so it's not too early. Queen e5. Okay, so he's putting pressure on the knight on d4. Maybe he can at some point put his bishop onto d6 and look towards the h2 pawn, because if he can somehow provoke white to start pushing his kingside pawns and create some weaknesses, then maybe he will finally get some counterplay here.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Two bishops against two knights. The bishops need open space diagonals to work with. That bishop d6 maneuver does look good. And already we have this knight under attack on d4. Behind it is a pawn on b2 that will need some defense. And now the knight b5 has been played. He's stopping bishop d6. And can I take on b2 is the question, but then you think, is there some kind of knight c7? I'm not even sure which one, but one of these knights to c7 opens up an attack on the bishop, attacks this rook. Craziness.
Yeah, the amount of tactics these two knights have been putting on the board here, just because they cooperate together so well, able to protect each other, unlike the two bishops here, as well as the active rook here. It's so tough to deal with this black.
I also can't tell if Yu Yang Yi is playing in the forest or there's like a tree wallpaper. It kind of looks.
And his camera is glitching a little bit. Also, I don't know. The Chinese team cameras have been very entertaining today.
I don't know if you've seen The Revenant, but I'm almost expecting a bear to come out of nowhere and start fighting him, because they are the pandas.
Maybe the panda bear.
Yeah.
The little icon from the upper right corner is just gonna animate itself in there.
Yeah, it must be wallpaper. I'll give him that. But the trees are back there, and it looks like snow, which doesn't really make sense. So I'm gonna stop talking about that and go back to the chess, because that's what I pretend to know better than the forest in the background.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's always fun for us to comment a little on the players, because we get to know them too, and not just their moves. Whenever we play chess, everyone is so serious, and you aren't able to tell their personality as much. But on that note, we'll save that for another time.
We will, and we'll go to the game between Dariusz Spierch, and his game is interesting as Li Chao right now, because it looks like black is gaining space in the position, and that is why white didn't trade queens. Because if you took on f5, his knight would capture on f5, put pressure on d4. Look at white's pieces. Bishop on c1 is kind of a passive piece. Then we'll come to f3, but black has gained some momentum. The position can swing a rook to the c file, and it looks like black is first to the action. The queen b5 pins this knight on e7 to the rook on e8, attacks the pawn on b6, queen g6 played, and now queen to c6. But as you can tell, the white knight came into f3, and the black knight is still on e7. White has gained a couple moves relative to what would happen if he traded queens.
Yeah, he certainly has. And now he has the option to take on c6 or retreat his queen one more time. If he does take on c6, then knight takes c6 is controlling the e5 square, so it's a little bit harder for white to play his knight on e5, but maybe it's good regardless, because if knight e5, knight takes, d takes, then we're putting pressure towards d5, which black has to defend. And it seems like the pawn on f4 could later become a weakness too, because we can play rook d4. And it just seems like white has a slight edge in a position like this.
Totally with your analysis there, that the isolated d pawn is one that's immediately under attack. The e pawn is cut off from the other pawns, but hard to get to, especially with the d5 pawn under attack. And rook d4, planting that rook to double in the d file or hit the f4 square. I like it a lot. And Dariusz says, well, let's keep the queens on for the time being, because maybe I'll just get the tempo with knight e5. Li Chao switches gears back to g6, really wants to trade queens. And the first thing I know is if we trade queens on g6, the knight is on g6 rather than c6, which puts less pressure in the center, but makes the h4 move harder. So he plays it first. I like that move. Now the f4 pawn is feeling a little bit undefended here.
So queen takes first and bishop f6. Are there any discovery attacks? Does bishop takes h4 work here?
So bishop h4 hits this bishop on f4, and there are two things I notice here. For starters, knight h4, rook f4, knight g6 is a problem.
Yep.
Because your knight is pinned on e7 to the rook on e8. The only way to defend the knight is second time is rook f7, and then I just swing my second rook over. You're losing this knight. So that's a big issue. And even if that didn't pan out, I could make me like bishop c7.
Right.
Coming after your queenside pawns from behind.
Okay, so it makes sense that he instead played knight f5, which is still putting pressure on h5. The rooks have just been traded. g3 is protecting h4 with a pawn, so now his bishop and knight are both free to go somewhere else. And Dariusz Spierch is just up a pawn here. But unfortunately, that pawn is on the king side where it's a 3 versus 2. Say it was on the queen side where it would be easier for him to try and create some type of pass pawn. He would have better winning chances than he does here.
Yeah, because if the queenside pawns get traded, then that 3-on-2 doesn't feel very sufficient. In general, I mean, it's hard to say, it's really situation dependent, but when you're up one pawn on the same side of the board, it's gonna better have knights against another knight rather than a bishop against another bishop.
Right.
So for your winning chances, that is, because knights can kind of operate very well, whereas the bishops have more space to work with for the defensive side.
Right. So maybe you can try and prioritize trading off the bishops here.
Yeah, it would be an idea, but I don't think that Li Chao is going to be too friendly. He's
No.
a friendly guy, but he's not going to let his opponent do that here. So we'll keep an eye on this one. Let us go back. First, let's look at the Oparin game quickly, because I do want to get back to the Naroditsky game. That one looks very interesting.
Okay.
But Oparin and Zhao Jun with his open H file caught my attention, and this really poor-looking bishop against a knight. So ideally, you would swap these knights and then just plug a knight in on d5 and say that knight on d5, an outpost square, permanent advantage.
Exactly. And another thing to build on what you said. So there is the open H file, which usually can be very aggressive for either side, but black can also put his rook on h8 at any point. So actually, the kings are pretty safe for now. But okay, rook a8.
Can you explain this move to me? I would never have thought about rook a8.
Because knight b5 is coming.
But then you can play rook a8 if you really need to.
Yeah, he's probably trying to do some type of prophylactic move, consider what his opponent wants to do ahead of time. I don't know, because now knight c5.
You've given the c5, right? Like, take. Your rook on c8 would have prevented my rook's infiltration, but something like this looks not fun.
Okay, so then a removal like rook a8 is showing how difficult the position is to play. Because if you go back to where he played that, what kind of plans can black go for here? He doesn't want to push f5 necessarily, because it might weaken up his king side too much. His bishop has no good squares.
The one thing I'll give him is that this rook sort of does need to stay on c1, because rook h8 would be the response. Like rook c8, rook h8. I'm trying to get my queen into a square like h3 and get an attack. And now I'm attacking your rook on h1. So even a queen retreat wouldn't help out so much, because I still get my rook h8 stuff. And watch out, I'm trying to checkmate. So rook c6 doesn't work. So he goes knight f3 first. And then look at this bishop.
I don't want to look at that bishop. That's not a good looking bishop. It just makes me feel a little bit sad, you know?
And in any endgame, the knight will be better than the bishop, because even if the bishop gets out, put it on any square you want, it can't attack anything. The knight can just jump around the board and
once you get the knight on c6, then you're just winning the pawn on a7. So the knight, if we took out all the rooks and queens off the board, then this is just winning for white, because the knight can collect black's pawns. And because the pawn is so advanced on a6, there are times you can sacrifice your knight for like the b pawn, and then that would rush the a pawn through. So I think that at any moment, white can force the rooks off the board with a queen e3 threat, because you'll have to play rook h8, otherwise my queen gets to h6. And so, all right, like queen e3, you immediately trade the rooks. There it is. He's going to go. He's going to go bishop f6. So okay, what a save. What a save. And hey, his bishop is at least doing something.
Yeah, it's actually defending the king. I'm proud of that bishop.
There you go, little guy. You got hopes and dreams too, buddy.
Yeah, you cover the mate, but then I go this knight to g5. I'm threatening queen h7, knight e6 check.
Right. Knight e6 check is a really nice move after your queen is on h7.
I mean, you might survive. There's a possibility you survive, but I'm not loving it based on the attacking chances.
Really, that last desperation. Maybe
you can just do something. I mean, you can just ignore me. But now I walked into it. I was saying knight e6
No,
check.
I think you have to move your queen so that if knight e6 check, you can take at least.
Yeah, something like queen e7, which doesn't attack this, because there's still mate here.
Right.
Feels like a flimsy defense. We got rook c1. He switched.
Why is
he wants to go after this pawn, I guess.
So he wants to. So he's going to allow black to take on b5.
Yeah, he was going to say, all right, you take b5, I go check. I mean, queen c7 right away, I guess is.
Sure, because you're attacking the bishop as well. And after we get the a7 pawn, there's no way to stop the a6, a8 promotion.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that was clever. He brought the king back to g8, because now rook h8 would be the move you want to play to do the same thing white was doing, but you have to play king g7 first. And rook c6, here comes rook to h8, now knight g1. So he brought the knight in to a better square, where his knight covers the only attack that black had. And he wants to put his queen on c2 and put a rook on c7 and just make progress there. Black's not going to make his life so easy, but white is clearly the dominant side.
Certainly. It is a little surprising, because we thought he had a more immediate win, but this is also the slow, safe win. And with a minute on the clock, it makes sense to go for a straightforward plan. That's
true. So let's keep our eyes out on this one. There's so much action going on, and we have to go around. So this one looks good for the unicorns. We have this game here with Darius Spirich also looking good for the unicorns. He only has 25 seconds left, though. I like the pin, I like the knight, but not the time management.
But at least this is one of those positions where even with 20 seconds, you can play it pretty quickly. Although you do have to be careful of tactics on e7 or losing your a pawn. Rook a2, maybe.
Wait, can you just win the piece?
We got rook e2.
Oh.
We have a nice one way to save it.
Yeah, you win the pawn at the end, but black is happier to get in that rook end game. That's for sure. It took.
Although probably white is happy to just trade it off, get the pawn back, and even get a draw here.
I mean, white's going to play for a win, right? Because after you get the pawn to be up one, but the time, 10, 9, 8, you got to move quickly if you have any hopes of winning this game. And, okay, he's really letting his time go low. Rook e4 is probably the move that will be played. Rook e6. Now he takes. So he won a tempo. He could have had this position with the king on g2. He brings to f3 first. He will take on a4. But now rook to e4 looks like a move that sort of stops this rook's progress. Because rook e4, how are you going to protect this pawn? You're probably like king g3, pawn f3, then move in.
Yeah, kick it out slowly.
Yeah, but Li Chao and Dariush, ooh.
It's a spicy move white has to consider en passant, but I mean with 10 seconds, okay, so he's just...
Yeah, this king can come here. Or that.
So rook takes d4, rook takes h6 looks good for white because he's also going to win the g5 pawn.
Right.
So black can't go for that. He has to protect the pawn. And now I think we're going to see perpetual.
I think he did the gain time. He wanted those 2-second increments. So he's going to bring his king back to e3 before trying to play for a win. And I'm not saying it's going to win the game, but he's just taking his time. There's king f2. And it was very smart by Dariush.
Right.
And wow, some of these games are so crazy. I don't know which game we should stay on, but here rook d7 is coming because of king e8. There's probably rook g7 and g6 sometimes. Oh, it's getting close here. He's going to keep the rook in a passive place, I guess.
Maybe he's going to come forward with his king now that he finally has the option to. Can rook e6 force the king back onto f2?
I can, yeah, because you're just trying to go like this.
Yeah,
I like that.
On f3.
That's smart. Smart defensive strategy. He's just waiting. Li Chao's just waiting. But we will not wait to see this. We have to go to all the games. They're all heating up. So we'll leave this one for now. Let's just go over to this game. Look at that knight on c6 against this bishop.
Wow. Someone should take a screenshot and add this to Giri's position.
I was about to say, Giri said that was the worst position you could ever see. This is worse. That is the worst bishop ever.
And there's no way that black can ever protect the pawn on a7 with his king. So the bishop is stuck there where he's lost.
That's bad. We have this game here. Abdusattorov loses to Yu Yangyi. The check to the king, knight g7 next. Thank you for allowing me to queen.
Nice shield there with the knight.
Yep, and he was up a pawn for a long time. And Daniel Naroditsky, look at this with the black pieces. There's a king on e5, but the king on g1 is almost getting mated. He made them with 3 seconds left.
Oh,
I think this king is worse shape.
Let's see Speed Demon Daniel Naroditsky save this. Yeah, at first I thought, okay, maybe white has a perpetual, but maybe he has even more than that. Oh.
Wow, the king is... Oh, I
there
do
goes
queen
the
a3.
queen.
Yep.
Yeah. Ouch.
That's really bad news for the unicorns. So 2 losses there. Oparin eventually wins. He takes that really disgusting bishop on f8, actually on b8, because f8 is the queening square. He pushes his pawn through.
Yep.
A nice final move, g5. And let's get back to Dariush Spirit. He needs to win this game because right now the Pandas are up 2, and to cut the lead back to 1 where it was after the first round of action is a necessity. Rook a6, giving up the pawn.
That's strange. So now white is up 2 pawns, which is now starting to become enough because sometimes even when you're just up 1 pawn in a king and rook endgame, that's not enough. Can you go d5?
You certainly can.
And then I guess king g3 makes sense as well because d5 is still an option even now.
Yep. You play rook e4 and then try to play f4.
Makes sense.
And if you move, I can go d5 in many variations. You have to be careful when you trade off the rooks. Because sometimes you trade off in a position that's actually a drawn king and pawn endgame. And so you have to be very, very careful about that. And this is good because now you still have both pawns. But if I just show really quickly, let's say, how do I make this? If I go here, d5, here, rook e6, and try to say, hey, I was told to trade when I'm on material. Problem is in a position like this, you're not making progress.
No, this is going to be a draw as well.
Right. So this is going to be a draw because even if you are able to trade pawns, like let's say I move here and move just to make this happen, I'm playing bad moves. Okay, he won.
Okay.
But he was winning. The other position wasn't smart.
And you were winning that end game instruction, Robert.
Oh,
so you deserve
you.
a point as well.
Thank you, but a good lesson to stay on the game at hand. And Dariusz Sferic beats Li Chao. They tied this round of action 2-2. It is now 4.5, 3.5 in favor of the Pandas. So before we go on a break, any final thoughts about that round? It was a brutal one.
It was a
Bloodfest.
brutal one. I thought the California Unicorns are playing really well, putting up a great fight. It's just the Chinese Pandas are so strong. It's so hard for them to grab any points off of them.
And as we look at the scoreboard real quick, we just see that Abdusattorov at 0 out of 2. He'll right the ship. He'll get going. Yeah. But that's the reason that California is down in this match. He's so strong, just 15 years old. But we'll see if he can get together after this short break.
A premium membership at Chess.com will help you improve your game with full access to a powerful set of learning tools. Unlimited tactics let you practice like a master, with more than 50,000 puzzles to challenge you at every level. Our library of interactive chess lessons, created by master coaches, will enhance every aspect of your game. And after each game you play, the computer analysis feature will give you feedback on every move you played, turning every game into a chance to learn. And that's not all. Premium benefits also include unlimited tournaments, video lessons, the Opening Explorer, and much, much more. Upgrade now to take your game to the next level.
I'm a fun guy. I'm such a fun guy. I don't know why people don't get it. Like,
Yeah, Robert, you're super, super fun. Never serious at all.
yeah. Oh, we're back. Thanks to our producer for letting us know that. We're just having a conversation about how I'm a little too serious sometimes. But what rule changes would you like to see for the 2021 Pro Chess League season? Get involved with #ProChess and make sure you're aware of what you're signing yourself up for, because other times you're caught on mic when you don't know it.
And don't forget to let Robert know that he is a fun guy. He doesn't have to be self-conscious about that.
Yeah, well, I'm working as hard as I can. Fun times. But what else is going to be fun is the last half of this match. 4.5, 3.5 in favor of the China Pandas. California doing all they can. And while we're talking about California, shout out to my very dear friend, International Master Teddy Coleman. I've seen you in the chat, Teddy. Don't worry, I don't miss you in the chat. I miss you in real life, though.
Yeah, that's all Robert was talking about during the break here. But the California Unicorns managed to not be down by 2 points so far, so it's still a very close match. They're really fighting tooth and nail here. We're going to see if they're able to maybe get an even score. Very, very fun match to watch so far.
So are you going to make a prediction yet? I asked you first. You went the whole, I'm unbiased. I'm the neutral commentator.
Well, I would like to have a crazy round where it ends up being tied with 8-8. Is that where I'd put my money on? Probably not, but I'm going to predict it because it would be the most exciting thing to happen.
How would you feel about a tiebreaker? They tie 8-8 and then they keep going. That makes our.
Oh, that's fantastic, because you're going to get more cranky. It's going to start getting late here, and cranky Robert becomes even more sarcastic than he already is, and I think that would just be a treat for us all.
Wow. Okay. Well, you were just trying to spoil the people. Let's remind everybody before the next round begins of the bracket of where we are in the Pro Chess League playoffs. We saw the India Yogis beat the Norway Gnomes on Monday. We also saw the Canada Chess Bras just destroy the Sweden Wasabis. Got to give credit to Sweden on a great season. They have a great fan base, lots of live events. And then earlier today, we saw the New York Marshalls take out the France Roosters in an absolute epic matchup. And the Marshalls, their reward is to play the Armenia Eagles. Artak Manukin was not happy.
He was not happy with that pairing?
And that's him right now. He's sending the sirens because the season for the Armenia Eagles might need. Wow, that's loud. I'm scared.
Robert, quick, hide!
Like, I don't know what's going on right now. I get ambulances and stuff, but you have like the whole brigade.
I have the ambulance fleet here.
Yeah.
Really going
Yeah. Well, I don't know what to say.
Well, we hope people are getting the help they need from those ambulances. Getting started here, Wei versus Darius Padaretti. Is this one of Wei's go-to openings?
Well, I don't know if Darius Switch is ready for the opening. Your face. I saw you just close your eyes. Well,
because Robert keeps quoting a song, and I thought he was going to go for it.
I thought about it, but I'm not ready for this jelly. I'm not.
You said it there, chat. Robert is getting his silly pants on. It is almost midnight here. We're excited to watch the games, and the energy levels are going up. So this is good.
It's all good. And Knight D7 played by Darius Switch, which looks odd because why are you developing your knight? Well, this is why. He wants to finish his queenside development, eventually play for pawn to C5. He will castle kingside. But look what Wei did. He's got kind of a Swiss cheese formation with now the D3, G2, E2, a lot of light squares, potentially vulnerable, but it's pretty clear at some moment he'll play D4, play bishop G2, and also castle kingside.
Okay. And Black is likely to play C5 in this position as well. Does he have any other ideas? Could he maybe consider taking on c4 first?
Yeah. I guess the big downside of taking on c4 is after b takes c4, now I have a bigger center, right? I have d and e pawns just to your e pawn, and I will play d4. I'll expand accordingly. So it's not a bad move. You also open up your bishop on d7, so that's the good news. But I do think that it's a very committal decision, and I'm not sure if Spirich is quite ready for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe what he should go for instead is c5 right away, or do you think he should prepare it with rook c8?
Yeah, he played c5. I liked your suggestion. And for Wei Yi, he's just playing a very calm approach. He can take on d5 at any moment, but if you take on d5, you're hoping your opponent takes with the pawn, so I can try to give you an isolated pawn on d5. We've seen in other games. But what Black will do is take with the knight, which opens up the diagonal for the bishop and gives more flexibility to his pieces. And so that's why Wei Yi took queen e2.
Okay, well, let's check out how some of the other openings are doing as well.
I see a really weird knight, so I want to come to this game between Gurio Parin and Yu Yangyi because there's a knight on h5, and you don't see that very often in the opening. Move 9.
And the bishop just went back to f8, so hang on. Are we just breaking all of the development rules here?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, that looks extremely strange. So he has to protect the pawn on g7, because if he would have played g6, then we would have had knight g7 and then take the bishop on e6, ruin the castle. This looks really good for black here.
You mean for white?
For white here, yeah.
I knew what you meant.
Thanks.
I knew what you meant. So bishop f8 says, hey, let me protect that pawn, and now I can play knight f6. So I don't have to play g6 if I don't want to, because that compromises some of the dark squares. The knight g8 to f6. But look at this move h4. Yu Yangyi's in an aggressive, he's in a feisty mood in the third round of action.
He certainly is. Now we see the knight back on f6, now that the pawn on g7 is protected. And the cool thing about it is that white can just leave his knight there, because if black takes, queen takes h5, we know you're sometimes told to not take your queen out so early, but in a position like this, where black doesn't necessarily want to castle on the queen side because of the semi-open c file, bringing in the queen closer to your king might also become problematic.
Yep. And Oparin captures so he can bring his other knight into the action and then move his bishop out, maybe to d6 to offer a trade of this very good bishop on f4. But Yu Yangyi has a good deal of flexibility. If you take on f4, white is actually kind of happy, because let's say I castle, you take and I take my pawn. It looks like, oh, you doubled your f pawns, you've given yourself an isolated d pawn, but very importantly, you're rushing f5 in. And then comes g4, maybe g5. A quick pawn storm on the king side can deliver a pretty big attack.
Yeah, it certainly can. I'm really liking this position for white. So let's say white leaves his bishop there. Black even want a castle here. I don't think he should castle on the king side. Too many bishops and pawns ready to come storming towards that king.
Yeah, you can actually maybe try to castle queenside, because now the king is on c1 on the queen side. Yes, the white king can come to b1, the rook can come to c1, but black can also eventually castle queenside and then bring the king to b8. So he plays f3. Similar idea that if you take on f4, the e pawn on f4 will threaten to go to f5. But a big difference now is if your takes, I can already castle kingside, and you don't get f5 in, because I can start with a move like rook to e8 or bishop f5. And the whole point is I have this rook e8 move at the end. Your queen is in line with your king.
Right. And move like bishop e4 here to try and save the position is probably still problematic because you're opening up the d file. So
yeah so you got to take care of your king before you do things like that. And I would take on f4 now. I really would, and just castle kingside and say, I mean, you're not doing a great job of finishing your development. I know what you want to accomplish, but it will take some serious time to do so. And so it takes, castle queenside, and still honestly looks nice for white, in my opinion, because g4 comes in, the same idea with f5, g5. Black needs to counter very quickly, and maybe c5, and something like that is just not in time.
Yeah. So still interesting to see for white. I would like to see that kind of attack go for, but we'll come back to this game.
Yeah, we'll come back here. Let's switch boards and go to a new game, because we have this one between Abdusattorov and Zhao Jun, where Abdusattorov's lost his first 2 games. He's probably just trying to get something where he feels like he can't lose. And
this is one of those positions. I think, even if he gets a draw, that's somewhat comfortable, giving him some padding to realize that, hey, he can get back into the games here. Rook takes d8 looks somewhat tempting. If the queen takes, then you can take on a7, and that would be a nice free pawn. And if the rook takes, then the pawn on b7 is hanging.
Yep. So both of these pawns are under attack. We understand that b2 is also under attack. So it's going to be a matter of like, can I get away with this? If I take on a7, you take on b2. Can I steal your b7 pawn? Not so fast, probably, because rook to d7 is very frustrating to see, as there's a pin on the bishop. And maybe this pawn will just remain weak. I can play a4. But both of us have back rank issues. But the black king is safer because the knight is blockading the initial rank.
Yep. So white decides to play b3 instead. It seems like he's just taking care of that pawn on b2, but it also gives black the opportunity to do the same. This is a very drawish looking position. One thing for white, if he does trade off the rook, he also has queen e7, and you always want to put one of your heavy pieces on the 7th rank if you can. There's just not enough weaknesses on the black king side for him to be very worried about it.
Queen e7 is a very tempting move because the advantage that white has in this position is the scope of the bishop and playing on both sides of the board. The bishop on d5 takes away access to whatever black wants to do on the long diagonal, but also puts pressure on the f7. And that's the critical square. That if you can eventually get this bishop to a square like c4 and put pressure on f7, that's how white plays for a win. And that means that black's life taking on d5 will just allow the bishop to get to that diagonal. As you point out, queen e7 at any moment will be a good option for white, just coming after the 7th rank and also that f7.
Yeah.
Critical square.
Definitely is, and it looks like white's best chance to go for it.
It is queen e7.
Nice, we're seeing it. You're predicting the moves
No,
here.
you said queen e7. Don't give me the credit for what you said. And then I'm looking at the top guesser, Dragon B70, already won $50 earlier.
And he's ready for another $50. What's wrong with that?
I'm not blaming him, but honestly, I want to give it to you. Can we arrange that? Simon, you listening?
Yeah, just send him my way. Thanks, Simon. Well, how about Daniel Naroditsky's game? We haven't seen his in a while, and it seems like he's getting lower on the clock, so he has 5 minutes to 8. Maybe it's an interesting position.
All right, let's check that out. Whoa, there's a pawn. I never expect there to be a pawn on d2 so late in the game, but especially when there's no darks for bishop. But clearly the bishop went to the long diagonal and traded on g7. And what's the count? Even material. Naroditsky's facial expression still sort of similar to how we've seen in the past.
Are we sure he didn't just get his face stuck like this? It might just be a photo, because every time we come, Naroditsky looks a little angry.
Yeah, he does. And look at that orange chair that Li Chao has. He's chilling. He's hanging out. Doesn't he always have a dog that comes to like play with him during the matches?
Oh, that's adorable.
So Li Chao is hanging out around. He's moving very quickly. 8 minutes for Li Chao and move 23. And when I look at a position like this, I'm looking at bishop takes b3 as black's next move with knight takes d2 fork. So how do we defend d2?
Well, one option is to come bring the rook on d1, but then all of a sudden we have to worry a little bit about a pin. If we push d3, then we're giving the knight the c3 square. We could push d4, which is a little more tempting because one thing we notice is that black's dark kingside squares are pretty weak. So if we can somehow open up the long diagonal and start looking towards there, maybe it'll cause some trouble in the future.
I'm with you. And what Naroditsky does is he defends d2 by attacking d5. I'm going to say, what are you talking about? Well, if bishop b3, queen b3, knight d2 is queen takes d5 at the end, and that knight is maybe not lost completely, but it's wandered too far, that's for sure. You have to give up some material to save it. And so I like white's position. You're pointing out the dark squares. That's the vital thing right now.
Right. Do you think the pawn on b6 is ever going to be a weakness for black here? Actually, it doesn't really make sense because the pawn on b4 is also weak, so probably not. But what about a move like f4, putting pressure on e5? Is it too risky to open the king side like that?
No. I guess the issue becomes if you play f4, you are pretty sure black might try f6, which has the downside of opening the 7th rank for a potential white attack. But if you take on e5 and take this way, then the open f-file could also favor black. So it's a mixed bag. He starts with d3 instead. Taking this knight out, this is a very good piece. The best black piece, honestly. And b4, you can capture, but then you give up your pawn 5 with check nonetheless. So it's a risky proposition.
Yeah, it certainly is. And Daniel is getting quite low on the time here. We know he's one of the best 1 minute, 3 minute players on chess.com, so he should be able to handle it. I like that he played knight to 2. It looks like he's rerouting his knight potentially towards f3 to put pressure on e5 without weakening his king side. And we'll probably come back to this game and see if either side has made any progress.
Yep. And we'll come back here, but Oparin against Yu Yangyi. I mean, what just happened? On the corner of my eye, I saw Oparin spending all of his time, and the last one was queen to e5. So Oparin tried to get tricky with some forks, everywhere. Queen e5, hitting the knight on h5 and threatening pawn f5, which wins the bishop because it's into the king.
Yep.
So
what are you going to do? Move your knight to g3. Then you're going to give 2 pieces for a rook, not to mention your king is being completely open.
I take here, and the king is very open, as you're pointing out, and I will eventually move my king, and this knight is not very happy here.
Yeah, certainly not.
He gave up his knight on h5 to win the d pawn, but at best you're getting 2 pawns. If I castle queenside, you get a second pawn. 2 pawns are not enough for the knight.
Certainly not, especially since you have no counterplay on top of that, and you got no good place to castle.
Yep, king is not doing well. Yeah, this is just an extra piece. So this is really bad news for Unicorn fans. It looks like Oparin just went astray, and he looks distraught. We see him on camera here.
Oh, yeah, he looks quite upset. F5 is a pretty exciting move. So both bishops are under attack right now. It is a little bit more risky. It means that Yu Yangyi had to calculate because he's leaving his king in the center of the board as well. G6 is a tricky way to try and complicate the position here.
Yeah, and another really annoying thing, I mean, obviously white has to be very accommodating, but if I take on d3, your king is a little stuck for the time being, so if you open up too many files and I can get a rook to the e file, it is some counterplay for black, but Yu Yangyi's way too strong to allow anything bad to happen to him. So it's 50 seconds left. You got 6 minutes. You're down a piece. I think we know the result of this game.
Fair enough.
So maybe we'll just wait it out just a little bit to see if Oparin even resigns here. I wouldn't be totally shocked if he does. But he probably should just take the pawn. And then white will castle and then maybe resign after.
And it looks like that's what he's going for here. Yeah, it's hard because the white queen is actually blocking the black king from castling on either side here. And once white brings a rook to the open e file, it's, like you mentioned, very close to being game over.
So h6 allows you to castle queenside once the queen moves, but you're also just still down a piece. Now for 2 pawns, and the pawns are doubled in the f file. Yeah, this is no fun for Oparin, but he has to play on. For the team event, the compensation that he can get is if he can mobilize, say, his pawn to c4 and pawn to d4. You're asking for a lot there.
Yep.
But to get some sort of attack on the white king and to advance the pawns is really the only hope. And this bishop is surprisingly good here. It defends f5. And if you take it, then I take with my f pawn, undoubling my pawns and giving me more pawns to push down the board. So I like what Oparin's doing. I just don't like how slowly it's gone for him. And the position objectively is bad for black, but he's doing the best he can given the circumstance.
Fair enough. That's all you can expect him to do. Almost 20 seconds on the clock. It's going to get increasingly more difficult.
Yep. So let us go elsewhere. I mean, she's trying to get some stuff happening. Oh, I have this weird feeling that he might not lose this game.
No way, Robert. That would be a wild prediction.
As wild as that, the ride is just as
happening outside. Yeah. Probably a little more wild.
Wait, did he just give up a pawn? Oh, is he trying to be tricky? Nope, that doesn't work. Bishop b3.
b3 just blocks. Well.
So if you can just take it.
Anything else that might be having his eye on? No. Yeah, he made a blunder in the time pressure.
He's just like, oh.
Looks like he's chewing some gum, taking his now. Oh, he hung his head in shame and shook it. Poor guy.
Yeah, I feel for him. I can't look at him anymore. I'm sorry,
please,
Grigory.
Let's go to the next one.
He's a nice guy. I can't do this to him anymore. Let's go to the Naroditsky game because we're transitioned into an end game where black is totally fine. I mean, white's also totally fine. I do imagine. I'm not sure I love that move though, because taking on e3, queen d4 check. If you go e2, you blundered because that pawn is pinned. So bishop e4 is like queen e4 check. Can't take a queen when your king's behind the pawn. So takes, check requires you to d2, and maybe you're okay, but I just don't like that this queen is making her way forward.
Right. Even though you only have a queen and a bishop on the board, so you don't feel like you can be checkmated. Even the king being more towards the queen side and leaving the queen side unprotected could cause some issues here.
And what's the 30 seconds that Naroditsky has will cause him serious issues. He didn't want to take on.
But also d takes e3 works now, right?
Yeah, I guess it'll be the same as before. And he didn't want to do this because he saw the writing on the wall that this pawn d3 was so weak. But I don't think the game continuation is really helping. King h6 prophylaxis. King's on a safe square. I probably play queen c1 and try to do it very quickly. But Danya down in 20 seconds. He gets his bishop out. Let me actually make progress
here. Okay, so the king go to e2 here or to g1? Because there's issues with both. That's probably why he blocked with a bishop.
His e4 move, you take, I go d3.
Oh, wow. This is really interesting.
Quality of pawns offset quantity. And this passed d pawn is strong, but bishop does cover the promotion square. So you play queen g5 setting, it's a better move. He's just trying to come after this pawn. You can't play queen c1 as you lose d3. Ooh.
Oh, he's going for queen h8?
Oh, I thought it was mate, but check, you have to go king g3. And then queen e5, and then I steal.
Is there's queen f8?
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe that's a little bit sneaky here.
You're totally right. What else can queen e1 check or queen e5, I assume?
I mean, this is that if black just keeps going for it, it's going to be a perpetual, so he has to allow queen f8. Is queen g7 the way to go? We always have to be careful with opposite color bishops because it's so often a draw here.
Yep, but
seems like he was worried about it being draw. So he plays king g5 first. Potentially, even if he plays queen f6 here, he thinks his king is a little more active.
Oh my God.
The king's going to e3. It's gonna go help that pass pawn on d4.
I wasn't expecting this, but this is the problem with your king wanders too far. Like your kings might get in some trouble if you're not. G4 check comes to mind as a move here, and he goes queen to d8. He didn't have enough time to calculate, but I was trying to hunt down this king. It really went too far, in my opinion, in the position. So he goes queen d8. He's trying to keep his king safe. As soon as you touch your g pawn, your king on g1 feels less safe. And how to win this game for black? Can I play bishop e4? One of those moves where you want to start trading to pieces.
I was going to say, if you move the bishop to e4, can't you just keep getting checked by the white queen and you can never block with...
You're right, yeah.
Your queen.
Yeah, you're right, because the bishop on e4 will be hanging. Here comes queen h4 check again. Okay, 7, 6. He's going to king f5. And at some point, I feel like g4 check.
Oh, man.
Because he's giving black 3 moves. He keeps repeating the position. A check, the king will come to f4, back to f5, and then you'll gain another move. Here you can even play queen f6, then h4. So you have to watch out for that.
So why do you think he's holding off on playing it? Do you think he's trying to get in a specific position before he does? Or is this his last chance? He's getting close to 3, 2, 1. Oh, no. I think he must think that's lost.
Yeah, but allowing the d pawn in feels similarly losing. But, it's not complete yet. Black's king is still on f5 after all said and done here.
Right.
And Tanya's forehead is just, I feel like he's about to headbutt me.
Yeah, be careful, Robert. He might wake you up. So I guess what white is also doing here is saying that black can't push d2 right away, because then the queen is not only having these perpetual threats, but also helping prevent the pawn. So queen b2, checking the king, attacking b4, and also helping support d2. But he has to calculate before pushing d2 or taking b4. Okay, I guess he's saying there's no way to get perpets.
Cover the square. Queen e7 is possible. Bring that queen back. You have 2 pawns now. And after queen e7, I see just 2 checks and these squares, and queen e5. Feels like the king is getting out of this. So he goes king g7 to try to run to h6. Makes sense. And Nerdisky he's not happy at all.
I mean, that's been the theme
Yeah.
throughout the match, Robert. But
And Oparin has lost his game. We saw that earlier.
He played Queen E3 and D2 here.
He does have to be worried at some moment about Queen H or F8, but I like that. I feel like you're not getting enough checks as white, so you could really consider that. Another issue is the bishop does cover the promotion square, so even if you get D2 in, you're not really threatening to queen just yet.
It's wild how it's still tricky for black to figure out how to win this despite being 2 pawns up, just because of how tricky queens are in these king end games with their powerful checking.
Yep. And now the king is very safe. That's the good news for Li Chao. The not so good news is bishop e4 will come and put more pressure on the black king side, and then also go after the pawn. In many of these lines, though, if you trade bishops, it actually can help black because your king gets safer. He's just, what is queen on e3? Here comes queen d8. We've seen a position like this before. How do you win this?
That's a great question. And can white ever try something like h4 to me? Is that a checkmate threat instead of a check threat?
So a double-edged move, right? You play h4, that pawn becomes a bit of a target,
right?
But you do
get rid of some of the space there.
Yeah, you swarm on that king. And by the way, it seems that Wei Yi and Dariusz Spiric have drawn their game while Oparin lost his. So Nerdisky needs to save this because just the flat, we'll keep them on screen just to flash the game here. Abdusattorov is down a pawn in an end game. So Abdusattorov not have, oh no, he's losing a piece.
Ouch.
The rook is under attack.
Oh no, he's going to lose a third game, and it was looking so drawish with slightly better chances for him earlier on.
Things are just not going his way.
Not his day.
Not at all.
And he was having a great performance until this match in the Pro Chess League as well, like we said, over 2,700.
And honestly, this could ice it because right now it's 6-4 China. And if Li Chao can win this game with the black pieces, and then we just saw Zhao Jun winning, that could be 8-4 with only one draw needed in the final round. King in. Do it. Here comes King F2 with a mating net.
Oh, wow. This is gorgeous. Queen F7, no more checks.
It's mate. Queen E1 to G1.
Mate in 2. Beautifully done.
What's he thinking about?
Oh, I want to see Danya's reaction.
Did they not see the checkmate?
It looks like his clock is paused for a second.
Well, you didn't see checkmate. It was a forced checkmate.
Oh man!
How did you not see that?
How did neither of them see that?
And the game continues. Okay, he's winning.
It's still a win. He's gonna get another queen, but not the fastest win.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How did they both miss that? Oh, so the king is going to escape because honestly, thankfully, there's also this pawn here. The queen can't come to c4 check.
Right.
Otherwise, even
with 2 queens, you can still have a perpetual, which is fascinating, actually.
Yeah, like let's say I check you and you can't take my queen. Of course you can. I go here, then you give this check.
Yeah.
And then this one, there's this check. Then you go here, there's this check. So we're just imagining this pawn doesn't exist.
Yep.
So there's like a lot of checks.
Exactly. It's a very tricky position if you would have accidentally pushed the pawn, let's say.
Well, sadly, the pawn still is there covering the square. Black is up a queen, will deliver checkmate. Speaking of delivered checkmates, I mean, how you miss here as the strong Li Chao did. He played king f1, probably still good, end up being enough, but missing checkmate in 2.
Well, he missed checkmate in 2, but he did get the win in a pretty tricky ending, so we'll give him some credit there. The Pandas only need half a point to clinch the match. Looking hard, really bad for the California Unicorns, but hey, it's still possible for them to come back.
And if magic's going to happen for any team, it will be the Unicorns. They're down 8-4. We have seen that comeback before in the Pro Chess League, but we won't see it until after this break. So everybody stay right where you are. We'll be back in a bit.
chess capital of Europe. Meet and greet and simul with Magnus Carlsen. It's the Pro Chess League Finals at ChessParty 2020. Caruana, So, Botez, Hammer, Rudolph, Chess Bras, an open Fisher Random Chess Tournament. Will you be part of the world's biggest chess party?
Well, this was supposed to be the key game of the match, but now that China's out to an 8-4 lead, I think every game remaining is a key game for the California Unicorns.
California Unicorns cannot even give a single half point if they want a chance at making playoffs. So we're going to see a serious fight from them.
Yeah, they'll have to be California dreaming just to stay in this match, because any half point given to the China Pandas will hand them the match and a trip to face the Germany Bears in the next round of the playoffs.
Well, nevertheless, we're still looking forward to this game between Daniel Swerch and Yu Yangyi. How do you see this game going? The two top boards.
I don't know. I honestly, the play will be changed because they all need to win. So whoever has black can't just settle for a position where if you're playing a classical game and someone's going to force a draw, like, no, I have the black pieces. Let's do this. But now you have to play sort of like a modern or Pierce or something that gives you a fighting chance. The Caracan, like Akar did earlier today in the tie breaks of the match against France. But I don't know how the players are going to play. I'm going to say there's no chance. It's possible.
Sure.
But everything in the world would have to go wrong for the Pandas. The internet would have to just go out.
Take notes, California. You guys are pretty good at hacking things. Call up your friends at Google and Facebook and let them know what to do.
All right. Well, I guess, if Conrad Holt were on the team, then I'd be like, he works at Google. So I'm like, oh, there's a chance. But right now, not happening. So let's get the party going. Let's get the games on. I'm ready for this final round of action. And it's the last chance for everyone to play Guess the Move. So
yeah, that's true. If you have been watching, don't forget, you can still guess the move and be eligible for the $50 prize if you're a premium member. And if you're not, then you will be able to win a premium membership for 3 months. So get on there.
Pretty worthwhile gift indeed. And we have no move from Svirch as of yet. Does he know that he's supposed to play?
Well, we see him at his computer, and we see Yu Yangyi with that nice tree wallpaper in the back. Looks very soothing, like some trees in the snow.
I mean, the more I look at it, the more I think he really is outside.
That's why the camera's glitching out.
Yeah,
Too
exactly.
much fresh air.
It's not working super well because he's out there. He's just man amongst nature. And so far, by Svirch non-committal opening, he think it was his bishop, and someone's backing up onto their set. Yeah, I hear the beeping too. I don't know what to say about it, but it's just there.
Yep. It's the beeping of the trash being taken out from the boards. At least California would hope so, because then maybe they'll be able to come back this round.
That was a good joke, and what I was going to say is this is Danny's blooper reel, where he's getting all his cuss words.
That's even better. That's even better.
He's just getting all his cuss words out the way. But what's going on?
Take two. Mic check.
We can leave them on camera, but what's going on in this game between Nodierbeck and Li Chao? Li Chao just spent a minute and 15 seconds. He clearly wasn't ready for the game. But Nodierbeck, who's 0 out of 3 this far, he needs to win. So let's go. We'll keep an eye on this one. We'll go back to Daro and Yu Yangyi, because Yu Yangyi just put his knight in the center. Daro taking a very principled approach. He wants to push e4 himself to give himself even more space than he already has. Because we see a position here where White has 2 pawns on the 4th rank. Black only has 1 on his 4th rank. So nice spatial edge for White thus far. And if you get e4 in and crack the pawn structure, let's just say we make some move like a6. Did I do that or did he do that? No, he did that. That was weird.
Wow. Yeah, because you were putting it in. I was trying to tell who was making the move.
I was clicking it and it happened. So then e4, if you do something like this, white has even more space in the position. The bishop looks stronger on a more open diagonal. So I do expect something like that to happen, but that was crazy timing with move a5.
Definitely is. And here he plays e4 right away, so he didn't even play rook e1 to prepare it because black is not going to take on e4 and trade off the bishops regardless. So white has a huge pawn center now, but that doesn't mean it's going to be like that the entire game. Black can always go for an... Actually, I don't know if you should go for c5. Maybe you should go for b5 instead and get some advantage on the queen side instead. What kind of pawn breaks would you prioritize here as black?
The toughest question to answer because every single pawn break has a flaw. If you play b5, which in some openings and positions is a good idea, there's a problem in c6. If you play c5, you also open the d file, which opens the bishop on b2 and then the bishop on g2. A draw was offered by Yu Yangyi.
Wow, what a troll. He says, I'm ready to just get the win. Let's just take a draw and go home. That's very funny. So, I would love to see it on all the boards.
What are the chances that Darius accepts a draw here?
0. If he accepts a draw and I was the team manager, I would never invite him to play for the Unicorns again. You can't take a draw here, and he knows that. He's a smart guy. So
I'd rather lose than accept a draw, and there's no reason to. Your position looks good for white. It's very early in the game. I'm not saying black is in a huge danger just yet. You have a very solid structure. You have this pawn chain b7 to c6, which stops this bishop from being as powerful as it can be. If you play d5 at some moment, there'll be lots of trades. For the time being, your rook on d1 is under attack by this bishop on g4. So black is hanging in there and is very solid. No clear weaknesses. Maybe a4 at some moment to open the rook. But a draw, come on.
Yeah. So he declined the draw. He played rook c1, just switching his rook on over. Knight f6. Are we okay with allowing black knight takes e4 and taking back with the bishop?
We're okay with it. We don't. The trades help the side with less space, so that's why Yu Yangyi is offering the exchange of knights. We'd love to have Darius take it because if the bishop takes, now we have an attack on d4 and maybe some pins on the diagonal and the file. Black can play queen d7, rook to d8, and go after this pawn on d4. And this bishop on g4 really is a test. So whether you play at some moment kick it out with h3 later in the game or just leave it there and attack with a heavier piece remains to be seen. But Yu Yangyi remains solid despite being slightly worse in my opinion.
Yep, fair enough. Let's check out how some of the other games are playing. It seems like the Oparin game looks interesting. They've already traded off queens.
Yep.
And Oparin is currently up a pawn, but his pawn on c5 is hanging. He has a terrible pawn structure. But if rook takes c5, then we have rook d8 coming towards the back rank and hitting the bishop and the knight. So that looks pretty bad for black, actually, especially with the bishop on g2 pointing towards b7 as well. It just seems that white has too much counterplay. So
yeah, it's a position where like I'll give you my pawn on c3. It's not about the quantity of pawns. We talk about this every week. It's the quality of the pieces. And here, these are undeveloped. White can just castle kingside and then try to make use of this pin along the last rank. So it's not that it's game over, not even close, but it is something that white probably doesn't mind exploring the way he's really thinking about it. And he's looking a little brighter. I think I can see. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, there he is. Come into the light, Wei. Walk in. It'll be okay. You've done your job. The Pandas have almost won.
He has 2.5 out of 3. He's definitely held up his end of the bargain here. And, well, now we can see Wei Yi. At long last, he makes his face present. And we've seen him in Speed Chess Championship, Junior Speed Chess Championship, playing it really late at night. So this is a rare opportunity to him to play in the light of day, but he's so used to the darkness to become his best friend.
Wow.
That, he's just hanging out.
That sounds like me since I moved to New York as well. So no shame in being friends with the darkness there.
Yeah, you just sound like Bane. So, all right. Well, it's going to be... he takes in c5.
So we're going to see rook d8. Well, hey, at least we're going to have some winning chances for Oparin. And 0 for 3, if he can somehow at least salvage his last game, maybe he'll feel a little bit better.
Yeah, so everyone needs to win. So Oparin, he's been okay thus far. Dusatarov has not been, but he also needs to win. Hard to go from 3 straight losses for Nordic to win. But let's keep on going around here. We'll come back to this game. Wei Yi finally took that pawn. He allowed the back rank check, but he's going to try to fend that one off. The game between Abdusattorov now with the black pieces against Li Chao. I'm liking the look of these rooks barreling down the A file, but I'm also loving the look of this fianchetto counter bishop. So it's that's a move that we saw coming because you could capture a pawn, but now the light squares around this king. If I can get a checkmate attack, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, and I just realized that I had said Operin had 0-3. Abdusattorov is actually the one with 0-3, and this is the game where he might be able to recover here.
Yeah, and a draw was offered, and Abdusattorov declined.
You guys gotta stop offering the draws. Come on, Team China. Although it's a good way to provoke your opponent and remind them that even a draw is not good enough here.
And what if they accidentally click accept?
Yeah, that would be devastating.
Mouse slips happen. We've seen plenty of them, and I mean this position just looked to me good for a Nordirbeck because let's say we see a massive trade on A2. Now B3 is hanging. Very importantly, E2 is hanging, and the light squares around the king still make it vulnerable. You can't go to G2. So if you try King F1, I give you a check. And you try to go to G2, here comes a check, winning the rook on C6. So trades have happened. Knight F4 attacks the bishop, stops it from going to D5 because the knight covers the square. Maybe it's just enough for Li Chao.
For Li Chao to be able to
hold this game.
The game, yeah.
G5, okay. I like what he's doing though. I like what Nordirbeck is doing. Where's this knight going?
Yeah, as soon as the knight moves away, E2 is hanging. White's light squared are extremely weak. I mean, if Abdusattorov can somehow open it up, and his best hopes are to try and.
Yeah, he can't move here because check.
Sorry, if Li Chao can open it up somehow.
Right?
Yeah.
Check. He can't go to. He can go to H5, but Bishop H3, Rook A1 mate is pretty annoying. You go here, check, here, thank you. My pawn covers this escape square. So Knight H5 not possible, Knight D5 not possible, Knight G2 not possible. So by process of elimination, that leaves us with Knight to D3, but you definitely don't want to play Knight to D3 because then I take this pawn and attack your Knight on D3.
Right.
And same exact checkmate mechanisms exist.
Yeah, would you say it's losing for White?
It's getting pretty close. Rook B5 doesn't work, I don't think, because of similar reasons with just Bishop with D7 hitting the rook.
And if Rook D5, just trying to chase.
There's a check.
And Bishop C6. There goes the rook.
Bishops love their open space, and this position clearly no exception. So Abdusattorov lost his first 3 games for this moment.
Yeah.
So he's rooting his teammates on, but okay, winning this game is won. Winning all 4, Alexandra, I don't know about you. I hate to be a skeptic.
It's just so difficult.
Yeah.
So, but let's look. At least he's coming back on this game.
All right, let's go around the horn. We'll just remind everybody of the big picture here. China up 8-4, which means California needs to win every single game. We have this end game with Naroditsky and Zhao Jun, where it's not a pure end game because there are bishops on the board. This queen is trying to slither into the square C1 at some moment. What you ideally would like for black is to somehow start trying to create a pawn asymmetry, but for the time being, it's very hard to see happen. Queen D8 check in the next moment will pick up the C7 pawn as well. So Naroditsky trying his best, but I'm not seeing it here.
Yeah, this is going to be an extremely difficult position to convert. At least he's the one who seems to have the slight edge in terms of the kingside attack.
Yeah.
But
is
there anything crazy you can go for? F5 looks terrible, but it's the only crazy suggestion. What about G5 at some point after we move the bishop?
But the problem is this pawn falls so quickly that I'm.
And you can take the pawn. I'll try and you're right.
Once this one falls, E5, B6, A5, everything is just hanging here.
Yep.
And it's funny that in this position, there's a 1 check here that you can't take because Queen H1 is mate.
Mm-hmm.
But after Bishop H3 check, you just go King H2, and Look at white controlling all of these squares along the first rank.
Yeah, certainly.
Queen d1. He just wants to make a draw. Team
And
player.
why not? Why not? Just
Team player.
wrap it up and let his teammates know that they're good to go.
Yeah, that is clear team player. And how you win this, again, you have to somehow break the pawn structure over there on the queen side. Doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. Oh, oops, sorry, I flipped the board.
Okay, for a second I thought, we went to the next game and it was also so drosh.
No, but let's keep on going because we should check out every game.
Yep.
Here, Darius Spirch still has more space in the position, but now the pawn d4 is an even clearer target. Rook e7 to go rook d7 to go after the d pawn. The pawn on b3 is also weak. I might prefer black's position already.
Yeah. Do you think white could ever go for d5 in this position just to get his pawn on a light square so the bishop can help protect it?
Would love to go d5. Right now, not possible with a rook staring down the queen, which is actually an instructive moment because rook d7 would have allowed d5.
Right.
If you want to play that move because the pawn on e6 is pinned as the rook on e8 is hanging. But this move order with rook to e7 instead says, nope, can't do that. Protected by the queen, attacking your queen. So one of those things where it looks like there's no difference between two moves. The ever so slight one is good for black. And we see both players in camera. Darius Spirch looking determined, but determination can't.
Is this a determined face or is this just the regular face, Robert?
His regular face is determined.
That is fair. Okay.
Darius Spirch wants nothing more than to win chess games, especially when his opponent's camera is flickering as if he's about to there's about to be some really terrible horror movie scene happening. So that's what I'm thinking with the flickers. And he's going all in. He's going h4. He has to.
He's got to try and throw the pieces here.
I gotta go over to this game because it's gonna be a checkmate, I believe.
Oh, let's see it. Let's see it.
And this one between Li Chao and Abu Satarov, the pawn on g4 is under attack, and the idea is to play f5. This is very unpleasant to say the least. Knight g3 doesn't stop me from playing f5 here.
Or isn't bishop g2?
Oh my gosh, missing mate in 1. Li Chao missed mate in 2. I missed mate in 1.
That's okay. You're allowed to as a grandmaster. You have your once a year quota.
What a ridiculous mate. I mean,
yeah, no, this is so sad. The king is just totally trapped.
That's checkmate to this king. So rook takes d4, protects g4, but here comes f5.
Yep.
Threatening the pawn g4, and if you take, you lose your knight. That's bad news. So he went check on rook d8. Here comes king h7, only move. And then is he trying to give this check? And if king g6, I'm rook d6, hanging on by a thread.
Really hanging on by a thread here.
Knight protects the pawn, but there's no good discovery with this knight. So that's actually very critical. Can I just push my pawn?
And rook takes.
I check.
You check first.
And then I say,
this is really nice. Nice discovery attack there.
So many tactics.
Yeah.
Way too many tactics, honestly. And it goes to show that even if not d3, I can check you here. I can check you here. King's in check. And then I can go bishop e6 and try to play a move like h5 and come after your king anyway. So it seems like there's many, many, many problems for white. He took on d4. f5 would be the move.
And yeah, his king situation is so bad that even though he's up a pawn, got a nice pass pawn, the rook and bishop combo managed to just squeeze the king into no space here. So looking forward to seeing f5.
Yeah, f5 looks...
He doesn't have any other moves either.
Yeah, because bishop e2, you'd love to get a mate in, but then the knight comes back to g3 and your bishop can't get back to g2 as we wanted to have happen before. So f5, what is the move to meet it with? There's a check here if I want it. There's a check here if I want it. Am I walking into... This would be a draw.
Right, we have to be careful for no perpetual.
And this is a draw because, oh man, that's brutal.
Hang on, and just go back a few moves. So is there no way to stop it after rook d7?
No, because here, check.
Yeah.
Here, check.
Yeah.
Here, check. Protecting a
Yep.
check.
And if we
And-
would have moved king g6 earlier, then rook g7 would mate.
Yep.
So f5 actually doesn't. Yeah, I'm sorry, for a second I thought this was on the board. So
Yeah.
f5 doesn't actually work. So can black try to make a king move to prepare for it first, or what does he do to allow f5?
Well, he gave a check. He
Okay.
gave it. Oh, that,
So he's protecting d7. Oh, that is so nice.
that's really
That's
smart,
so
isn't it?
nice. Yeah.
And if you take, I check you again,
Mhm.
and then I take on f5. So after I give you that first check, you might have to go king g4. And then I don't see how you isn't, because if I check somewhere, the knight comes back to g3. Well, this is honestly fascinating and ridiculous at the same time. Like
The fact that white is holding on to this.
it feels like there should be a win, but he took step 1, king g4.
Wow. And actually, if you look at the live board that we have,
Yep.
at some point the eval bars, okay, now it's still looking like it's,
Yeah, it's going up for white.
wait a second, that's the wrong side. Eval bar, be careful there.
Yeah,
We
white.
thought black was better here. Is there, I mean, at the very least, I would think that black at least has a perpetual,
No.
but not anymore because of knight g3. White
Wow.
is actually winning now. He got out of the mate, and there's no way to keep the king in checks.
What's particularly crazy about this is, okay, of course, we love no direct's position,
Mhm.
but when looking at this match, I was forecasting, you're trying to prognosticate what would happen in this one. I would never in a million years have expected Nodirbek Abdusattorov to be 0 out of 4
Right.
because he's so strong. He's young. He plays online all the time.
He already had an incredibly strong performance so far in the league. Just so many things
And
looking that he'd be a good pick.
when bad things happen to good people, this is what's going on right now. This king is infiltrating. There's already a draw in the Oparin game against Wei Yi, so the match is officially.
Oh,
in
and
the
Li
books.
Chao offered him a draw, a pity draw. Is that being nice? Is that being kind of a roast? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and if I'm Nodirbek, he took it, but Li Chao just saying, what do I need to beat you for?
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
winning.
He doesn't even need to flex this position.
He's winning the H pawn against king into G6 and mating this black king. So amazing how quick it turned from being almost a mate for black
Yep.
now to being a mating attack for white.
Yeah.
Chess is just cruel. No forgiveness.
Tough.
Leaves us with 2 games. They drew by agreement.
Oh, okay, well, wow, we got 3 draws here. And you can tell that the Chinese team ended up tweaking their openings to be a little bit more solid. They knew all they needed was a draw. We saw 3 draws. They have great team coordination. We should give them that. And now Danya can feel a little comfortable to just accept a draw as well.
He's going to play to win.
You think so?
Yeah, because his king is either going to try to run over to the queen side or
Okay.
he's going to play G5 and have an outside pass pawn. Danya's going to try to win this game.
Should we try taking the
Ooh,
bishop? Because
that is-
white's pawn structure is going to look terrible.
I think that actually is a very important move because when you get here, if you ever play for G5, so let's say here, I just go in here, you can never run with your king because of the E pawn queens.
Right.
And if you play G5, you're actually helping white in many respects because my king is going to try to come up this way.
And win the pawn. Oh, that's fascinating. So actually, bishop takes c4 might even lose for black here.
If
Or
you're
if he
not
pushes.
careful.
If he pushes. Otherwise, if he keeps his king on f6 and e6, then it's just a draw.
Yep. So he's going to try to get this pawn. That pawn is now the target. It went from being G5 pushing H4, and the king has to be careful because it can't go to C3. So just to show why, like if you try to say go here, like king C3, then I have my pawn push. Your king is too far away, out of the box. I'm promoting.
Got it.
So he's played C5, just saying take my pawn, but you know that Danya is thinking about B5 because then A4. And then the king comes. The problem is the king is in the box.
Right. So
to
he's going to
pawn.
catch the pawn after e3.
Yeah, the king just gets it. And you would love to say, oh, let me go for the other side of the board too. I have 2 pass pawns. But white has pawns of his own. So B6, the king has to come to try to get the pawn. And then I can go E5 and E6 check. And your king can't hold both pawns.
Right.
So it's a very instructive end game here between these 2 players. And he's thinking, do I take it? Do I ignore it? Do I play king to E5? but the idea of pawn b5 will like continue if you leave the pawn on b6, even if white eventually takes it. So he plays king f6.
And both players are at 20 or 30 seconds, so we will see the time play a role.
Yep.
They're both very sharp at endgame skills, so I think it's unlikely that either one of them will make a blunder, but it's still quite a bit of calculating here. It's not the most straightforward pawn ending because both sides, well, white already has a passed pawn and black has potential with b5 and also with g5 if the white king isn't careful.
So both are options. Oh, that's an interesting move. Okay, so c3 is played. It doesn't change anything. So if you take, the problem is you can't create a passed pawn with your double pawn. So you'll be up a pawn, but you get to c4. My king just will always go back this way. You need some sort of opportunity to play for a b5 push. It doesn't really look like it's going to be possible, but he's probably going to bring his king around to c6 first. All right, we're not. They're just going to make a draw. Be nice and calm.
Maybe he's just taking some time here.
You're trying to flag Zhao Jun?
Trying to get his increment so that he can think for an extra, 2 seconds.
Yeah, and he's playing for a win, so you might as well try king to d7.
Right.
The one downside is if you left this king into e4, like an e5, king e4, then your f4 pawn is lost. So you have to be careful about this. Oh, that was
Zhao Jun, you saw it. It was under 1 second on the clock.
And they're going to draw, right? King e2 is a draw.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not?
Oh, he should, as long as he doesn't flag.
I think he switched the move. Okay, now king d7, finally, one, and oh, he barely got the move on.
I thought that was going to be a flag.
Oh, and Naroditsky finally plays b5, but this has to be good for white, just for the same reason we talked about before with the check. So Naroditsky turns in. Wait, he let him queen. Why did he let him queen?
I don't understand why this was necessary. Now it looks.
He could have after eighth original king c2.
Right.
And the king can't stop both e and b pawns.
No, he was going to be winning here. He just seems like he blundered under the time pressure.
Yeah, so he's just trying to. I thought he was trying to make a draw, but now he's winning. King comes in. This e pawn is too strong. But king. Okay.
I would think that.
I mean, white has to be the side that's better, but if you lose this pawn as well, and you'd be a bit careful here. Oh, queen c6 check in the end game.
And
do king c4.
Queens?
Queen b6. Queen b6 is winning. You got it, because queen c6 check, you trade queens, and the king comes and gobbles up the e pawn, and there's this outside pass pawn to deal with.
So the king is going to be close enough. He's actually getting the win here. That's remarkable.
What a swindle.
Well, I mean, that's at least a happier note to lose on.
Yes. What a swindle by Naroditsky. He played on. Kudos to him.
Yeah.
He won the game. It looks like Yu Yang could be in that.
Oh, look at Daniel's expression. That look of shock. I hope somebody clipped it.
I was going to say, it looks like Yu Yang could be in the image in his background.
He's laughing at himself.
Yeah. And Zhao Jun is laughing at himself. But nice background for him. He's taking his personal study in the library. And all right, he lost the game. He had no business losing that game. The China Pandas still reign supreme in this one. 9.5, 6.5. My 9-7 prediction.
Pretty close by a half a point. Again, wait, you said 8-6.
9-7. Can't be 8-6.
Oh, it can't be 8-6. You're right. Yeah, 9-7. You're right.
It's late here.
I've been making a couple more slivos the later it gets.
Well, I mean, what now? It's over.
Done.
It's done. How do you feel about California being knocked out? You lived in California for a while.
Well, I expected it. They were just a huge underdog going into this. Chinese Pandas are always in the top 4, often the top 2. So they're one of the strongest teams in the league. But the league is getting stronger and stronger each year. So the fact that they're not the favorites, I mean, St. Louis was still the favorite, but the fact that they're not necessarily guaranteed, it's already showing you the improvement of the league.
Well, we're going to go on a quick break and get an interview, so that's going to be fun for us. And I have no idea who we're interviewing, so that surprise will be fun too.
But stick around.
Yes.
Because we're also telling you guess the move winner.
Oh, I forgot.
Had to throw it in there before we get off.
See you soon.
premium membership at Chess.com will help you improve your game with full access to a powerful set of learning tools. Unlimited tactics let you practice like a master, with more than 50,000 puzzles to challenge you at every level. Our library of interactive chess lessons, created by master coaches, will enhance every aspect of your game. And after each game you play, the computer analysis feature will give you feedback on every move you played, turning every game into a chance to learn. And that's not all. Premium benefits also include unlimited tournaments, video lessons, the Opening Explorer, and much, much more. Upgrade now to take your game to the next level.
Well, what a pleasure for us. We're joined by Grandmaster Li Chao of the China Pandas. Congratulations on a great performance by your team.
Thanks.
Going into the match, you're facing a team of very strong players from California who are particularly good at online rapid and blitz. What was your preparation like when you're facing a team like that?
Actually, yesterday we have around like 30 minutes or around like 1 hour minute, something like this. We talk about how to play and how to choose the opening. But the other point is our internet, you know. Before last 2 rounds, our internet very bad, like today. And in my game, I think 2 games like offline 2 minutes, around like this, something like this. And Zhao Jun's game also have 2 or 3 times offline. So we talk about so much about internet. not of course preparation very important, but internet for us is very big problem. Yeah.
That's fair. And you already know that your team is having some internet issues. Is there any way you can improve it for future matches so it's not a concern, especially going into the playoffs or going into playing against the Germany Bears?
I think I should after this round, and I think I should talk with Chess.com and find some way to how to fix that. I think this is very important for us because you know my team players said if give them a very good internet, they can beat everybody. But you know sometimes internet very important for us. Yeah.
And when you said you were talking about all sorts of things, do you have any sort of idea of how many points you want each person to score, or just everybody was going to play their best? Because Wei Yi throughout the season has been an amazing player for your team. I think he had 20
yes, of course.
28. But how did everybody gear up for this match, which was a very tough one, even if the final score was heavily in your favor?
Actually, I told them I only got 2 points, and I think Wei and Yang Yi can get 3 points or something like 3.5, and Zhao Jun maybe will lost 1 game, something like this. We hope that, but I don't know finally who is our hero. I don't know, but my feeling is Wei Yi, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. You seem to have very good dynamics, and it's good to hear that you guys are always planning before the matches. The Chinese Pandas have always made it to the top 4. Obviously, the rules for this season are a little bit different. Do you think it's been the most difficult season so far?
Yeah, of course. I think very interesting, and opponent very strong, and strong than before 2 or 3 times, I think. But you know, about our team, we lost first and second and third teams, and we finally got 4th. So that's why I think this year very strong. And but after this round, maybe I think better than before because you know for now in China we can't go out and we can't play tournaments because I don't know how to say that words, but I think in USA have same things now maybe, and we can't go out and we can't play tournaments, so we all stay in the home. I think better than before because before our player have some tournaments like Yang Yi, he played Weekendzy, and but for now maybe we will not in Liren because he will play more important tournaments than us.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess a big question for your team is you're playing the Germany Bears next. How do you see that match going? Do you feel confident about your team's chances against a team that was super good during the regular season.
But actually, I didn't see about that team, but I heard Kolobov played very, very well. So we should find some way to maybe draw him. I don't know.
And if you were to make it to the Final Four, which other 3 teams do you think would be the hardest to compete against?
First, St. Louis, I think.
St. Louis, and
Like a
what's your
monster.
second pick? What's your second pick?
Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, but your team is very strong. I think that because your team struggled in the regular season, that people are forgetting about how good your team are. I mean, you're playing on board 3.
Right.
So clearly your team has a lot of power behind it. So I'm not counting the China Pandas out. I don't think you should either.
But it's up to about our player have tournament or not, and it's about the internet. But I think in the final, maybe in Norway and play with face to face, I think it's better for us. I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And of course,
Mhm.
Some of the best players from China are playing in the candidates coming up soon. So can I ask you about the candidates? Who do you think is going to win the tournament? Who's your favorite?
You mean Ding Liren and Maha or the others?
Of everybody, of everybody.
But in my mind, I think I hope Ding Liren can got champion. I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think he's the favorite?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I like the support for your countryman, and of course, he's a great chance. I know he's arrived, and we wish him the best as well. And the situation,
Yes.
and wish good health to everybody, including
Okay.
you on your team. So thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations again, and we'll see you very shortly for the
Thanks.
next round of playoffs. And as we see here, the money game of today's matchup was Naroditsky versus Wei Yi. So I don't know who won the money game, but
We're about to tell you.
Of course, Dragon B70 wins another $50.
But 55 out of 88 is an insanely high percentage, and obviously a pretty high face value as well.
Yeah, so deserved champion is Dragon B70. We see other players of Guess the Move, RTA Lau with 7 out of 9, a very long username with 7 out of 11, getting 1 month diamond, and others as well getting the gold and premium. So here's our bracket. Going forward, we have China. They just beat the California Unicorns. They take on Germany, St. Louis, India, Armenia versus New York, and the Canada Chess Bros await the winner of the next matchup between the Chicago Wind and the Russia Wizards, who play tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So that will determine the last spot in the quarterfinals.
Oh, that's going to be an exciting match. I know that I'm going to be watching, even if I'm not commentating. And then we're going to see very soon which teams are going to be in the top 4.
Indeed. And I do want to just give one more shout out to the China Pandas. Everyone around the world, it's a very scary time with the health crisis. Li Chao spoke of it, how this affects their team. They can't really leave their homes, which is a terrible situation. But kudos to Li Chao and the rest of the teammates. They put in a great effort. He's very, very humble. I always love speaking with Li Chao.
Oh, for sure. And he actually provided kind of an interesting perspective about how they're stronger because of the coronavirus, because it's forcing their team to stay from home instead of being tired from tournament travel. So obviously it's a big concern and a lot of people are worried about it, but that's one positive way of looking at it.
And another thing to note is that they all prepared together. He said they all have a conversation, which is surprisingly rare amongst many of the teams. There are teams that have shown great camaraderie. France, for instance, Armenia, we know they're a very tight-knit group. But to see China with all of their superstars, very highly rated players, come together, talk about the various aspects of preparation, even talk about what they need to accomplish on individual moments. So I think the China Pandas have been overlooked because of their tough regular season. But
if you remember the last couple of Pro Chess leagues, you did so hard to not take them seriously.
And as Li Chao said, if they get to Norway, he feels like their chances greatly improved because of their connection and all that stuff. So gotta give one last shout out to them. A tough end to a great season for the California Unicorns. with Daniel Naroditsky, a fan favorite. Other players in their team put in a good effort, but unfortunately for Nodirbek Abusattorov, that was, I think, the essential difference.
It was. And it's disappointing for somebody who played so well the entire season to choke on this most important match so far.
15. Hopefully they'll get over it. Much more good chess to come. And, well, the party continues tomorrow with the matchup between Chicago and Russia. But for now...
Actually, the party continues today because I am going to be streaming an adoption match against my little sister. She's getting cocky. She's playing a little bit more chess nowadays. So I'm just going to beat her 10-0, put her in her place, and motivate her to study for her tournament in April that we're both playing in. So if you guys want to hang out, we're going to be raiding the channel soon.
And I'll be going to sleep, so you won't get to see any of that. But everybody,
Robert's out.
I'm out. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.